everyone, and welcome back to the Damage Report on Fridays, our favorite days. It's fun. The weekend's so close. The garbage is about to be taken out, and you're not gonna wanna miss that, especially because it's not Brett. Brett's still gone. Brett will be back in a few weeks or a month or like a year and ever. You know what we have for you? We have a special treat for you to help welcome you to the weekend. Deep Dive Zone, Jordan Uhl. Jordan, how's it going?
John, it's going well. I'm sorry, I'm not Brett. That's a big, garbage suit to fill. But I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited. I'm excited to have you here. Excited to have you throwing away some political garbage later on in our Garbage People of the Week segment. So all of that'll be fun. And you know what? I'm excited for some real chill vibes. So we brought a really chill guy for you. I think we could all use that. So why not? Thank you to everybody who's already here, whether you're in the members app, YouTube, Twitch, whatever. We appreciate you being here. Please hit the like button and share the stream if you haven't already, so that people know that we're live. You know, like in theory, hundreds of thousands of people would know that because of notifications, but that's not the way the YouTube works, unfortunately. So give us a little assist if you can. And as we go along, if you want to send us comments, tweets, super chats, anything like that, we'll respond as we go. And I wanted to let you know, as always, after the program, we're 90 minutes now, by the way, if you haven't been here in a bit. Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie is going to be coming up. It's gonna be awesome. Yesterday, I was lucky enough to be Dr. Rashad Ritchie's co-host for the first time. We had a lot of fun. I don't know who's on the show today, but you can be guaranteed it's gonna be good. Actually, I believe this might be accurate. Shelley Winter, conservative host. Brett, it's Brett. Oh, I see. So Brett can do Friday shows, I suppose. Okay, well anyway, no, that's awesome.
A super younger show.
Oh my God, a newer, fresh show. Okay, well, Brett Erlich and Dr. Rashad Ritchie, they said it couldn't be done. They implied, why would you? We're gonna find out whether they were right. Anyway, so that should be a lot of fun. Oh, also the Twitch pitch. Would you like to potentially stream for TYT on Twitch? Well, you are rapidly running out of time to send in your Twitch pitch. In fact, today is the last day. So tyt.com/Twitch pitch. If you'd like to get more information about that. Apparently, the semifinals will be announced during the show on June 21st. So that's exciting. All of that's coming up. That said, Jordan, we got a lot of news to get to. Are you ready to talk about some stuff?
I'm never ready, but I'm going to pretend like I am.
Jordan, are you ready for Joe Manchin to look like a fool?
Oh, always.
Okay, good. I found something you're ready for. Well, in that case, I'm ready too. Let's do this. Joe Manchin has been saying we don't need to get rid of the filibuster because there's good Republicans and they will, set aside their overriding strategy of trying to stop anything good from happening and trying to consign Joe Biden to the waste bin of history after just a few months. They'll set all that aside and they will join us to do things like pass some sort of voting rights bill, not the For the People Act, which he doesn't support in its current form, although we're gonna talk about what he might support, but they'll come and do something. Well, Senator Mitch McConnell, now minority leader for the Republicans, decided, you know what, as convenient to us as this time-wasting bipartisanship is, I would prefer to make Joe Manchin look like an idiot, so I'm gonna throw him under the bus, and he did. He announced over the last day that the For the People Act and Manchin's proposed alternative are equally unacceptable and totally inappropriate, which is amazing because there is a pretty good distance between the For the People Act and what Manchin would approve of. They're equally unacceptable. So he doesn't even care, Joe Manchin, about your ideas. And we're gonna have more from him attacking Joe Manchin. But before we launch into our commentary, I wanna let you know, in case you didn't see the show yesterday, some of what Manchin supports as a possible compromise bill, because if you're gonna compromise on anything, it should be democracy. And what he doesn't support. So here's what he supports: a public election holiday. That's good. I've considered that common sense for literally years. 15 days of early voting, including 2 weekends of early voting. Computer models replacing partisan gerrymandering, potentially the biggest thing in that compromise now. Automatic registration, but through the DMV, not like truly automatic registration for everyone. You would have to be in the DMV system. So that would include most people, but not everyone. So bear that in mind. Some new campaign finance disclosures, but not everything that was initially in the For the People Act. Requires voter ID. That's great. and continued voter purges, which we know Republicans love. So you don't get a public campaign financing system. You don't get true automatic voter registration. You don't get universal vote by mail. You don't get a good bit of the ethics stuff and the campaign finance stuff and a whole bunch of other stuff. But Jordan, what do you think so far about what President Manchin will allow?
Oh, it's a perfect example. This whole scenario is a perfect example of why it's just meaningless to even try for bipartisanship right now. We are in a moment with a closing window of opportunity to do anything. Time is running out because after summer they're going to be focused on midterms, and who knows what that's going to look like after those elections. So we're running out of time to do literally anything, and that this, which you point out, like this kind of sucks compared to the For the People Act. I mean, there's some good things, but I mean, voter ID laws, a system that where people rely on the DMV, and all the issues related to that, to accessibility, to location, to distance people have to travel, to all these different hurdles they have to jump through, even get an ID. Just feeding into a voter ID system, which is already something that Republicans benefit from because it disproportionately impacts poor and black and brown voters. This is a system that would just continue the status quo with a few mealy-mouthed gifts to the left, and even that they don't want. Think back to when Obama was president. This famous Tortilla Coast meeting with Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. I think Eric Cantor was there. And John Boehner, a few other key House and Senate Republicans, and they said, look, Obama's gonna be a one-term president. Nothing he wants is getting through, that's it. And they obstructed every step of the way for both terms. Why are we now to think that Republicans, even if there are a few good Republicans in the back benches, why are we going to think now that McConnell, who ultimately runs the Senate, is not going to is going to change on that past stance? There's no way they're going to give Biden a gift. This is a contentious midterm and an even tougher re-election campaign in 2024. They're not going to give him anything. They want him to run on the COVID response, and that's it. So if that's enough, sure, that might help Democrats, but they're not going to give him anything, even what is ultimately a compromise.
Yeah, and they would have stopped him from running even on the COVID relief if they could have. They unfortunately failed because of reconciliation. Yeah, you're totally right. Look, trying to work. We know that Manchin's lying, by the way. Like Jordan and I are not having a serious conversation about like, oh God, we have to convince him of the merits of nothing. He's lying, but democracy needs to be defended. We all seem to agree on that outside the Republicans. From who? The Republicans. Why are we gonna involve them in the process? They're the ones that are destroying it. So yeah, that's obviously insane. I might have a slightly different view of this on some parts. Obviously, the inclusion of the voter purges, requiring the voter ID, it is right-wing garbage. Not to say that only right-wingers have ever supported it, but it's generally right-wing garbage that, as I pointed out earlier this week on the Damage Report, they couldn't get it under Republicans. Trump didn't pass national voter ID. So now under Democrats, we get national voter ID. That's insane and would make accepting this compromise quite distasteful. That said, there is good stuff in it. It's insane that it's up to one senator from West Virginia whether we get this stuff. Like, let's just stop and acknowledge that. It's madness. The nation, which is largely not in West Virginia, voted for Democrats in 2018 to take over the House, gave them the Senate and the presidency. Joe Manchin is such a small part of all of that. The idea that he would be responsible for all of it is annoying. But that said, getting rid of gerrymandering is not a small thing. A public election holiday would be great, especially for the working class that has a much harder time getting away to actually vote. The guaranteed 2 weeks of early voting would be fairly significant. And by the way, requiring 2 weekends of it means that it would fight back against some of this attempt by the Republicans to destroy the souls to the polls efforts. So largely trying to stop like Black Christian voters from their voter drives. Some of the campaign finance stuff, blah, 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 is good. Now, it's just, you got those poison pills, Jordan, but like getting rid of gerrymandering, that's fairly huge. We don't know the system they replace it with might have some issues too, by the way, but at least for now, that's something. Any other thoughts before we get to more of McConnell attacking Manchin?
Well, I mean, even Stacey Abrams, I think people Or I guess to their credit, people are trying to engage us in good faith, like Stacey Abrams, I think, threw support behind it. And then Republicans said, well, now it's not even the Manchin proposal, it's the Abrams proposal. Just like immediately trying to make it like,
why don't
even
Jordan,
more toxic.
You're totally right. Why don't we show a little bit of Stacey Abrams, then I'll let you continue about that. Stacey Abrams has obviously been, involved in activism around voting rights for a number of years. That's sort of her core thing. So what does she think about the Joe Manchin voting rights bill compromise?
That a compromise you could support?
Absolutely. What Senator Manchin is putting forward are some basic building blocks that we need to ensure that democracy is accessible no matter your geography. And those provisions that he is setting forth are strong ones that will create a level playing field, will create standards that do not vary from state to state, and I think will ensure that every American has improved access to the right to vote despite the onslaught of state legislation seeking to restrict access to the right to vote.
Okay, so Jordan, Stacey Abrams on board. What do you think about that? Does that make you more interested in the compromise? Does it make you less interested in Stacey Abrams? How do you feel about that?
I think people got really upset at her for even saying this, and I don't I don't really care in the long run. Like I think what she ultimately wants to do, and she's proven that in her work in the run up, especially to the key special elections. But like this is, I think she's saying like, sure, like literally anything, we'll do it, knowing full well like the issues you pointed out with voter ID, with the registration system through the DMV, some of these more like restrictive measures. I think she's not fully on board with those, but she's saying like, look, this is a broken problem where like our democracy is basically hanging together by a thread. Can we fix this? I'll work with you. That's fine. Like if she, coming from the South, I'm sure she has to understand what it's like to work with Republicans as a Democrat. So she's willing to do whatever, and I know full well that she wants more than that. Like she's got a full voting rights drive and effort and campaign and organization. So I'm not reading too much into it. I think that's just something she has to say for posturing on TV. But even then, like I said, Republicans just still took it and was like, well, it's the Abrams proposal now, and we hate
it.
They're babies. They're babies.
Oh, Joe Manchin, you stupid idiot! That you're pretending to engage in good faith with this. Yeah, I wasn't sure how she would come out actually, but I guess in hindsight, it sort of makes sense. These are some of the things that she's been fighting for, and again, it's a compromise. It has some things that absolutely blow, but it also has things that are amazing. It's both of those things, and I understand. By the way, some people, like a lot of people, I was gonna say they view people in politics this way, but they basically view everything in politics this way. Either something is divinely handed down from God, perfectly pure and awesome, or it deserves to have its face pushed into a belt sander. You're either the best ever, or the second you're not the best ever, you're the worst ever. So they view Stacey Abrams through that lens. Either she is the best pure progressive ever, or I will toss you into a volcano, you traitor. I think there's a middle ground, and Stacey Abrams is on the better part of that middle ground. Not the best progressive on literally everything. Some of the money stuff in the past hasn't been absolutely perfect. You know who she's better than though? A lot of them, including Joe Manchin. So, and also by the way, I personally value activism and organization, and she's been doing that. She might have given the Dems the Senate, by the way, her and others in Georgia that have been doing work for literally years. So I consider what she says in this area to be worthy of at least taking note. Anyway, let's get to a little bit more of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell appears to want to blow out of the water any remaining myth that there can be bipartisanship, I guess. So here's what he had to say about Joe Manchin's compromise voting bill. All Republicans will oppose that. Specifically there, he's referring to redistricting reforms and campaign finance disclosures. So let's just bear in mind what he's saying. You having any idea if billionaires are buying elections? No, you don't get to know that. McConnell is saying, I am going to keep it in the shadows. They can not only buy it and have it be legal, but you don't even get to know who has bought your democracy. Also, no, some idea that, and again, the process is important, but computer modeled congressional districts that are supposed to make some sense rather than been crafted by partisan hacks to produce the representation they want you to have. No, he wants that. He wants the hacks. He's pro hack. So he called the compromise, by the way, also it retains S1's rotten core, an assault on the fundamental idea that states, not the federal government, should decide how to run their own elections. Whereas the conversation is really about states deciding that you shouldn't really have substantive elections anymore if you live in certain ones. He says, in reality, the plan endorsed by Stacey Abrams is no compromise. It still subverts the First Amendment to supercharge cancel culture and the left's name and shame campaign model. And Jordan, I don't even know what that is. That just like he gets paid every time he mentions that, so he throws in everything. Like Joe Manchin's compromise is critical race theory. Is it just like I don't? What does this have to do with supercharging cancel culture? If like people automatically are registered to vote?
Yeah, you're seeing that. You just mentioned it. Critical race theory and cancel culture are like they're two big buzzwords, but it's also, this came out in a memo a couple months ago. This is the Republicans' like midterm strategy, is to get people like whipped up into a frenzy over cancel culture. So they're calling it everything. Even look at the guy who was doping his horse at the Kentucky Derby. He said it was a case of cancel culture. Like everything. What is not cancel culture? So they're just like using it as a buzzword to get people fired up, and they're preying on that like kind of instability that so many people feel, where if one slip up could end your career because people are so like nuts online. But like they're feeding into that. But to get back to the voting thing, this is again another instance of him not caring. And think back to Obama's most recent memoir about a few months ago. In it was a passage where he talked about him and Biden negotiating with Mitch McConnell, and they're laying out like, look, we're gonna do this, we'll do that. This is our compromise. Here's how we can work together to get this done. I might have even been infrastructure, but I can't remember specifically what the bill was. And McConnell's response was, "You're under the impression that I care."
Yeah.
He's telling you who he is. Believe him, please. Don't even try. What with this limited time we have, enact your agenda and then run on that in the midterms. Yeah. Plain and simple. Don't waste any more time.
Yeah. You want a sequel to that historical event that you just we got one for you. So Joe Manchin's like, we're gonna work together. Good Republicans, I'm gonna get a bunch of you because you exist, and we're gonna work together. And Joe Manchin or Mitch McConnell just like punches him in the face. He like Spartan kicks him into a hole. And as Joe Manchin is falling into this hole, he says, McConnell has a right to do whatever he thinks he can do. I would hope that there's enough good Republicans who understand the bedrock of our society is having accessible, fair, open election. He's still gonna try to work with them after all that. Dude, they just slit your throat. And you're like, wait, well, there's good Republicans.
Oh, it's spectacular to watch. Yeah, it's if you don't laugh, you'll cry. But like this is,
I might do both actually.
Right, at the same time, it'd be great.
Yeah,
very cathartic. Yeah, it's just this is insanity. You're doing the same thing, just expecting different results. They told you who he is, but look. Why would you think this when we're like within a few months of Republicans just turning a blind eye to what occurred on January 6th? Very few Republicans even cared about that, or even said like, okay, yeah, this is something that we should like, punish people who led the charge for or investigate. Like, why now would they suddenly care about the integrity of elections? They just encouraged a rabid mob to storm the Capitol because they didn't like the outcome.
Well, Jordan, they have found one angle on January 6th that they're interested in, and we're gonna be talking about that a little bit later on the show, as well as right after this break that we're about to take. Isn't it fun when someone accidentally joins the left? Like they don't mean to, but they're accidentally left. Well, we've got that for you coming up after this. Okay, everyone out there, let's see what's going on in the super chats. Cujo says, I wanted to say thank you. My Rainbow Dragon Squad tee came in and it's wonderful. I struggle with being out. This means so much more than you can imagine. That's awesome. Like if we can help in literally any small way, I'm very glad to. So thank you for watching. It's a great shirt. Dante Manolo with a big super chat saying, this year's super chat is for Dragon Daddy saying he was moist in the face yesterday. I don't remember why I said that, but apparently I will never escape it. So thank you, Dante, for reminding me of that. BO says, what say you? Corrupt politicians don't want to fight corruption. Say it ain't so. P.S. Miss Brett, but love Jordan on garbage day. That's nice, BO. Forrest Dudley says, celebrating my dragon badge maturing into a 6-month-old adult today. We've hit the adult badge level on YouTube. Interesting. Also, Manchin's continued begging for treats from GOP makes it hard not to rage at Abrams for backing him. She's all but signaling voting rights surrender. Well, look, Forrest, maybe we disagree a little bit. I don't consider it a total surrender. It's American politics. It's needlessly ruining an opportunity. But I'm also, by the way, I no longer have any faith that the Democrats are going to, I don't have much faith they're gonna win 2024. I have virtually no faith they're gonna win in 2022. So in some cases, this might be like well, this is all that we can get for now. I think this is all we can get. Like, they're only going to be in charge effectively. Like Jordan was right, midterms are coming and midterms last 1 billion years in the US. So they've got like 6 more days to do something. And when you're talking about democracy, like some sort of progress is better than the ruined system we have right now. It's awful, it's awful. But anyway, like I said, she's not just popping in like me, like, hey, I'm on YouTube. Here's what I think about the fundamental nature of democracy. Like she's been working on it for years. So anyway, okay, Non-Human Humanist says these voter IDs are insane. Most European countries require you to have a government ID with you at all times, but also they are issued automatically. Fees are usually low. My last one was for free. By the way, if you had voter ID and they were like, oh, and we're gonna put $30 billion into issuing it and sending it to everyone along with their mail-in ballot, there's no way the Republicans would actually support it. They're not actually interested in that. By the way, I just want to briefly break into our social break to say, I love your background. Like, have we not acknowledged formally your new background, Jordan? It's so nice. You got fish in the back for deep dive. You got cool lighting effects. I love it. There's books. I really want to see which books, but it's too small. I can't tell.
There's a couple Hedges books.
Nice, okay.
Book on Aaron Swartz, who is like one of my heroes. Chris Arnade's Dignity, and Predator Nation by Charles Ferguson, which is a really fantastic book on the financial collapse. And he also directed Inside Job. So some of my favorites.
I haven't read that one. I did read Alien versus Predator Nation. It was okay. It was okay. Sequels aren't always great.
That seems more your speed.
No, I have many like fine books.
Yeah.
Some of them I've read.
Deal. I always see Winning the Green New Deal behind you, and I like that book a lot.
Yes. And I've got a few of my old grad school books. So anyway, nice. Okay, let's see. Oh God, okay. Z Huddle subscribed for the 5th month. Says, hey John, thanks for the work you, Cenk, and Anna, and everyone else do to deliver honest and critical news. You guys are awesome, Z Huddle. Thank you so much. We are behind on Twitch. We're gonna get to more of that, but there is a lot more news to get to. So we'll see you after this. Okay, let's jump back into the news and talk about healthcare via TikTok. Isn't that gonna be fun? Over on TikTok, there is a conservative TikToker named Conservative Rose who was posting about vaccines and why the fact that they're free shouldn't necessarily make you more confident. And from there, she accidentally became a socialist. Watch.
Let me ask you this. If giving out free COVID vaccine shots is the health of the nation, then why don't they give out free chemo? Why don't they give out free insulin? Food for thought. If the government really cared about people, they would make stuff like that for free. So it should make you think as to why they're pushing this free vaccine.
So I just want to say, you couldn't see, but I watched Jordan's like, it was basically that guy in the woods, like smiling in real time.
She's speaking to my heart.
You're making some good points, Conservative Rose. I like it. Yeah. Why do we let people die of cancer and heart disease and diabetes and all sorts of chronic things that we could help? why do we allow that? You raised some good points, Jordan. What do you think?
Yeah, checkmate, libs. It's exactly, but I think it also speaks. If you were to remove people from these partisan bubbles, from these kind of hyper partisan media outlets that like Fox is trying to distort people's perceptions, MSNBC to an extent is trying to distort people's perceptions. If you were to talk to people just straight about their class-based issues, and ignore what McConnell is pushing or what Biden is pushing, people want a system where healthcare is simplified. No one likes their insurance company. No one says, "Oh yeah, I love trying to get my claim approved for several hours on the phone with an insurance representative." No, it sucks. It's a ton of paperwork. If you had a streamlined system and that if the wealthy paid for, you remove all titles, all branding, all partisanship on paper. Vast majority of the country loves it. The people who don't like it are the rich, and those are the people who influence narratives and talking points to convince the working class that it's not in their best interest. So at its core, this is an example of that. Beyond partisan lines, this is something that's wildly popular if you were to just present it as is. So I love it. I love when these things happen because it's slightly affirming, because I do think a cross class, cross race, a multicultural, intersectional populist message is a winning one.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Great point and very well said. We're gonna have in just a second someone else who sort of echoes what you're saying there. But before we get to that, the second video, I wanna make clear of two things about this TikTok account. The first, I am fairly certain it's not a parody. There's a lot of conservative stuff going far back. Seems to really like Ted Cruz and guns and Donald Trump and all that. Secondly, what this is not is, hey, look at her, she's dumb. I wanna be very clear about that, and I'm not interested in seeing that in the comments. I don't know what other content she does. Maybe she does awful stuff. But like Jordan said, she seems open to this. And if that's not enough to convince you, I wanna go to a video she posted after her first one went viral and lefties and libs were sending it around and all that. Here is how she responded to that.
On liberal TikTok. I'm okay with that because it showed me that people think that just because we are conservatives that we're not allowed to have or agree with some of the policies that liberals do have. That is not the case. I believe that some of the policies that liberals do, Democrats have, are good policies. They just need to be rewritten, redone, and it could possibly work, but they're just presented wrong. I don't understand some of this logic that just because we're conservative or liberal that we don't believe in some of the same things. So
I love that. I mean, I did not expect it. Normally, I would have expected, screw you for mocking me. No, she's being fairly reasonable. She's like, no, I didn't really accidentally do this. I am actually open to some of this stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's totally awesome and pure. They need to be rewritten. In some cases, the right sort of fairly willingly allows themselves to be distracted by nonsense like, what genitals Mr. Potato has and Dr. Seuss and stuff like that. And it takes like a bill like Medicare for All, which would provide the outcome that she's talking about there. Marco Rubio calls it socialism, and so they turn against it. Like there's a lot of other stuff here. It is nuanced, but she responded, I think, fairly reasonably to all of this being pointed out, Jordan.
She did, and this is an example of the type of person that we should think about reaching out to, because I think like you with the obvious caveats, like she's a terrible person elsewhere, obviously. Let's hedge our bets a little bit, but
well, I mean, we should say I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't watched 50 of her videos or anything like that.
Oh yeah. I'm just hedging, just to be careful. I have no idea, but remove maybe not just her, any person who thinks like that. I would argue could be won over because there are class-based issues that affect them that progressives and leftists have the winning message on because it's inclusive and it directly responds to their material need. Now, she has this fear that Democrats and the left broadly would not address this issue sufficiently. that means she's open to a right-leaning populist. If someone like a Josh Hawley, and remember, Trump at one point promised universal healthcare. Obviously, he's full of it, but he did promise, and they liked the idea simply because he proposed it. It's not that they have this animus toward the idea of Medicare for all. It's that the Democrats are proposing it. So if someone like a Hawley or someone like a DeSantis or a right-wing populist or demagogue or God forbid a Tucker Carlson introduces this, it's going to be popular on the right. Now, the end result of this being enacted, sure, could be good, but that sets up a right-wing populist movement that, as we've seen time and time again throughout history, it ends horribly. It puts women, people of color, disadvantaged and marginalized communities on the front lines. This is you do not want a nationalist and populist movement on the right. History could not be more clear. This ends poorly.
That is true, definitely. I think everybody gets that. You're totally right. Yeah. And this is one of the ways you could appeal to people. Like, imagine if Bernie had been the candidate proposing stuff like this. Is it inconceivable that conservative Rose would have voted for Bernie Sanders potentially, or not voted for him, but come to support him if he institutes something like this? It's entirely possible. Yes, this is a way that a right-wing populist could try to come to power if right-wing populists really exist, and mostly it's just more xenophobia. But theoretically, it could happen. And by the way, conservative Rose is not alone. If you were to take a look at this, this is Pew. Among Republicans, do you believe that there should be a single national government program for healthcare? It's in the middle there. From 2019, when 30% said yes, by the way, of Republicans, it was already 30%. From 2019 to 2020, it went up 4 points. So more than a 10% gain effectively in the number of Republicans who support a single payer healthcare system in 1 year. It's not small, it's not niche. It's 1 out of 3 Republicans. That's pretty significant, bear that in mind. Now that said, let's move on to someone who I'm gonna have a little bit less sympathy and empathy for than conservative Rose as we move to this. Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert, speaking on the pandemic, believes that it is a tragedy. It's not necessarily the tragedy that you might think. She tweeted, "The real tragedy with COVID is that people were so afraid of dying that they stopped living." Which is a mangling of William Wallace if I've ever seen it, but that's not the real tragedy of COVID. And I don't think this is a particularly difficult one to figure out. I think the 600,000 Americans who died is a bit more of a tragedy than that some people might still be wearing masks, or some people might not be chilling at a rave on the weekend yet. I don't know, Jordan, am I crazy? Or is what she said reprehensible?
No, I don't think you're crazy, John. I think she's just a disgusting person. Completely tone deaf. It's pandering to a broader fringe base on the right, and this is something that I think we should watch out for. And I would encourage members of the Dragon Squad and TYT's audience at large to do your research on the primary candidates on the left, because from what I understand from people who have been who work in DC and have been following that race closely, is she's extremely vulnerable because she's been voting against different trade and labor measures that impact her hometown, which is a union stronghold. It's a fairly left-leaning area, and she really only got elected because of her gun stuff and being a business owner and people knowing her from that. But right now, she's seen as a very vulnerable House candidate. So if people want to get involved, find the best progressive to you, donate, support their campaign, get her out of there. Like this is a winnable race.
That's a great point. And when you find them, let us know. We'll bring them on. We would love to do what we can to take her out of Congress and send her back to running her restaurant that apparently gave people explosive diarrhea. So anyway, and she could definitely lose. Look, when they're sending Lauren Boebert, they're not sending their best. And by best, I don't mean a good person or anything. I don't have that high of a standard. She's not even as good at this as like a Marjorie Greene. She's like a fumbling, less natural Marjorie Greene. She's awful, don't get me wrong, but she's not as good at it. And look at that, like that tweet is that people were so afraid of dying that they stopped living. No, like actually people weren't afraid enough of dying, so they stopped living. That happened for some people, and along the way they got other people sick. That's really annoying. For some people, They just were convinced that it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal. And so I wanna just briefly give you a bit of an update. We did pass, by the way, 600,000 American dead. We got that. And it was distributed across America. Take a look at this map, breaking down at the county level how many people died. The big circles are 10,000, the smaller circles are 1,000, and you can see it all over. Like each of the little circles is 1,000 people, 1,000 families, 1,000 social groups that are never gonna be the same. That is what a little bit more than 1 year of COVID did to us. That is the real tragedy right there. And we're still experiencing it. We're still losing hundreds of people literally every single day. And we're worried about this Delta variant that's spreading, that's more transmissible. We're trying to vaccinate, but we're having trouble actually doing that because people have been poisoned against the vaccine. On the pre-show, I talked about J&J. It's done basically. People won't take it, apparently. They're having so much trouble getting people to take it because briefly they pulled it from circulation because they're worried about the blood clots. I worry at the time that it's never gonna recover. It never recovered. It's 4% of all the vaccinations is the easiest one. One shot and you're good. People don't wanna take it now because they were convinced not to. So that's the real tragedy. I don't have any hope that Lauren Boebert is gonna learn that, but I'm going to continue to try to get through to as many people as possible. Any other thoughts, Jordan?
No, it's sad. It's really sad on the vaccine part specifically. Just how, and you see how effective the right is at convincing people that these types of things, which are well-meaning, are not in their best interest. So it's like, again, why it's important to support things like TYT and independent progressive media who are going to push back against that kind of stuff, because that's an effective machine that the right uses as a political arm. It's really devastating stuff, and everything from this non-controversy of critical race theory to the drumming up cancel culture to how they've attacked trans kids just for wanting to play sports, just vile stuff. And now it's ultimately like, oh, don't get a vaccine, literally putting people in harm's way. It's disgusting.
Exactly, it is. Well, we are gonna take our second break of this hour, but when we come back, Joe Biden, his administration, getting in some ethics trouble. I know that we're in the media, so we're supposed to have one standard for our enemies and the others for those who are supposed to be somewhat our allies. No, we're gonna be consistent actually, and look at the evidence here. And then Bernie Sanders, he sees politicians across the spectrum for a variety of reasons thinking, you know what's a good enemy to have? China. And he's fighting back against that. So we're gonna give you his thoughts on the tension with China after this. Okay, everyone, let's see what's going on. We're gonna start off at hashtag TDR Live over on Twitter with Edison Carter, who says even Manchin's bill won't pass, and we all know it. And when things change and we lose the House and Senate, everything will pass, no matter how heinous. And Dems will do nothing with the filibuster to stop it. If they do, the filibuster is gone in a heartbeat. Well, look, I agree with you that the Republicans are going to do or change whatever they have to get done what they want to get done. That is totally true. I also fear that I don't see how the compromise is supposed to pass, because I don't think there are 10 good Republicans. I fundamentally don't. I hope that I'm wrong. I love being wrong about politics. I don't think I am here, and he's not gonna get rid of the filibuster. And I don't see how you could conceivably get this voting rights bill through reconciliation, because the parliamentarian is stronger than Galactus. They're just not gonna be able to fight back against their parliamentary knowledge. So yeah, I'm interested in what's in it, but not because I think it's necessarily gonna get passed. Now, let's see what's going on over on Twitch. E Wood subscribed for the 5th month and says 5 months balling on Bezos bucks. It's trash day. Can the whole GOP fit in the can because they got to go? A bunch of people are gonna go. We're gonna see if there's room. This thing is actually fairly packed at this point, but we're gonna see. Software Dragon subscribed for the 2nd month, says hello all, been lurking in the interwebs listening to the show during work for almost a year. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone at TYT. Have some Bezos bucks for all that you do. Software Dragon, thank you for watching during this last year. It has been, I think we can all agree, a hell of a year. Thank you for being with us. Shoegaze Dragon Georgie gifted 5 tier 1 subs. As always, Shoegaze, thank you. Platinum Yeti gifted 5 as well. Thank you to both of you. Expanded the community, what an amazing thing. Daisy Dragon gifted 2 as well. The Real Leica subscribed for 6 months, thank you. Sorkin Dragon for 3. Sorkin Dragon, which of the Sorkin properties are you a fan of? Controversially, I'm a guy that is known far and wide for having the worst pop culture takes ever. I kind of like The Newsroom somewhat. I don't like certain parts that are the most cringeworthy TV ever, but it's in a newsroom. I think I'm just so desperate to have a good show in a newsroom. I watched the morning show. That's pretty good. Anyway, yeah. So I don't know if that's the one. Anyway, Sorkin Dragon, thank you. Knitted Carpern, subscribed for 5 months. Thank you. Blue Tech the Belgian Dragon gifted 2 subs. Is up to 260 subs gifted. That is amazing. Honestly, thank you so much for that. And Steph Munt subscribed for 13 months. Lucky number 13, more than a year. Thank you, Steph Munt. I appreciate that. Now off on the super chat. Forbezilla, the Godzilla Dragon says, John, that's President Manchin to you. That's true. I often refer to him as that, but sometimes I forget. Carrie Venus gave us a little super sticker. Thank you, Carrie Venus. I see you. Bernie's F. and Mitten says, Jordan is so adorable. I can't stand it. TDR rules. Well, you're gonna have to get past that because there's more show. So you're gonna have to stand it in some way. Drakina Dragon says, in the spirit of being reasonable, how about top positive 10 things to credit Republicans with? Ooh, I kind of like that. Mostly because I like that Francesca would be like, how difficult would it be to put together that list? Top 10 things we need to thank Republicans for, basically. Maybe we'll do that next week. I'll add that to the list. Thank you. Non-human humanist says Bernie, Medicare for all, Trump, bleach for all. Yeah, unfortunately. Hey, as long as you're getting it free. Lord of the Rings says, gonna have to disagree, John. I think being drawn and quartered might have been the biggest mangling of William Wallace. Yeah, that's true. By the way, #1 movie I wish I could sub a different actor in so I could enjoy it once again is Braveheart. More after this. That's a great list. I'm gonna have to put together that list. Movies you wish you could change an actor in so you could like it once again. Anyway, thank you everybody. Welcome back to what remains of the first hour of TDR. I'm John Iadarola. We got Jordan Uhl. Jordan, if there is a person watching this that doesn't know what you do, what do you do? What show do you host?
Yeah.
You host a show.
I do lots of things, but on TYT, I host a show called Deep Dive, and we are on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, and on Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So come and join us. Last night we had Chelsea Manning on the show.
No big deal.
She's cool.
No big deal.
Yeah. We hung out. We talked about gaming. We got into some cool conversations around like kind of social factors in her life and the lives of others that led her to joining the military. We got into attacks on whistleblowers, more gaming stuff. The important topics with Chelsea. When you have Chelsea Manning for an hour, it was awesome.
Quick question
in the chat. Yeah.
What is Chelsea playing these days?
She does a lot of strategy games like Crusader Kings, Command and Conquer type stuff. And you mentioned it earlier, but she's talked about her favorite game of the past 10 years was Red Dead Redemption 2, and she specifically talked about the story and character development in that game that led her to like it so much.
Better than a movie, better than a novel. I think that story is. I'm playing it again after a couple of years. Yeah, I like Chelsea even more than I did before. Well, thank you, everyone. Check out Deep Dive. You can also check out Indisputable after our show. I also want to let you know tonight, very special event coming up after the main show. It is our 3rd annual Juneteenth special. We're gonna have Ben Dixon leading the first hour, Jared Jackson leading the second hour, and along the way, we're gonna have people you know and love. You've seen on a bunch of different programs. Maybe some you haven't. Bridget Todd, Kenya Evelyn, Dr. James Simmons, Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Jason Carter, Charles Coleman, Wozni Lambre, Wisdom Cole. They're gonna be talking about reparations, diversity in politics, representation, voter outreach, a whole bunch more. That's coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific time, so definitely check it out. And by the way, today at Shop TYT, we were talking about that Rainbow Pride shirt. 100% of the profits are going to the NAACP. So if you want to go to shoptyt.com and buy some gear, maybe for Dragon Squad, for the Damage Report, for anything, the proceeds are going to be going to the NAACP. So that should be awesome. And with that, why don't we jump back into the news? Donald Trump and his administration were criticized quite a bit by us for using nepotism to staff the White House, giving his daughter a job, his son-in-law, like they were all up in there. And that's largely what they consider government jobs to be for. It's not a place where you get the best people so you can get the best results. It's just a way to pay off your friends and buddies. But what about the Biden administration? Is there some nepotism there too? Well, apparently there is, according to reporting the Washington Post. In the first few months of Biden's presidency, at least 5 children of his top aides have secured coveted jobs in the new administration. They include 2 sons and a daughter of the White House counselor, the daughter of a deputy White House chief of staff, and the daughter of the director of presidential personnel. Former director of the Office of Government Ethics, Walter Schaub, says, while it may not be as bad as appointing your son or daughter to a top government post as Trump did with Jared and Ivanka, it's still bad. Not as bad as Trump, cannot be the new standard. So let's give you some examples of what this looks like, bearing in mind that initially Biden came out the gate swinging, like I'm gonna do some ethics stuff and it's all gonna be cool. On his first day in office, he signed an executive order implementing ethics rules that in key ways went further than the Obama administration's policies, but nothing actually stopped the hiring of people who are related to White House officials. So earlier this week, the Treasury Department announced the hiring of J.J. Ricchetti, a 2020 college graduate whose father is one of Biden's most trusted West Wing aides. Ricchetti is assuming a junior level position as special assistant in the Office of Legislative Affairs. Steve Ricchetti's daughter, Sharon Ricchetti, is deputy associate director of the Office of the White House Social Secretary, a job she secured after working at the Aspen Institute and on the Biden transition team. Bruce Reed, a deputy White House chief of staff and longtime Biden confidant, has a daughter, Julia Reed, who works as Biden's day scheduler. And some of the more experienced sons and daughters of White House officials hold higher level jobs. There's more. We can get into the specifics, but Jordan, what's your reaction so far?
I think Schaub's comment sums it up perfectly. Sure, it's not as bad as Biden, like appointing Hunter to be like a special envoy somewhere, or like a diplomat, or taking him on trips. Effectively, it was very weird, but effectively, like Ivanka was like the first lady because she was like so closely attached to him on some of these, at some of these important meetings and sitting next to him. If he had Hunter doing that, I think that would be kind of the 1-to-1 comparison. But this is still pretty bad because it clearly is not on merit when you have 3 of somebody's kids in top posts in the White House. That's not by accident. That's not just a random blind application. And I also think about how they purged staff who at some point in their life smoked weed. And that is like, after saying like, look, we're gonna reform these policies, we're gonna catch up to like kind of where modern society is, we're not gonna punish you for doing this. And then as people were honest and forthcoming, as they got security clearance or got jobs, retroactively were then punished for it. So it's just like, it's still, we have a long way to go before we clean up government. But it's a sign of just the same status quo. It's a big club, and we're not in it. So this is how they enrich themselves.
I'm glad that you reminded us of the weed thing. It also made me remember the guy in the press office that had been like harassing reporters, and they were so defensive. That guy, they wanted to keep him. Like, if only he'd smoked weed, they could have yeeted him out of the White House. But he only harassed a female journalist. So anyway, yeah, you're right. And look, I agree that statement is totally true. It isn't as bad for a couple different reasons. One is that the positions aren't necessarily as senior, and there does seem to be, in some cases, an actual consideration for qualifications. So the press secretary, Jen Psaki, she has a relative that has a job, but is also trained in that field, which is a little bit different than like Jared Kushner being in charge of the literal Middle East peace process, when I honestly don't know if he has training for literally anything. I don't know what he does when it comes to real estate. Trump doesn't seem to do anything. Why do we assume that Jared Kushner knows literally anything about floor joists? I don't know, but he was in charge of, that was just one of his things. He put a couple hours a week in the Middle East peace process. But that said, be better. Build back better for government. Build bureaucracy back better by not hiring your family members. It is a problem, as you point out with Ricchetti, when your nepotism is only limited by the fact that you ran out of kids. That's not supposed to be the limit on your nepotism. So be better. And I know, like, some people will be like, well, why should you be discriminated against just because you have a family member that's in government? Because you just should, because it looks really bad, and I want to set a better precedent. Not necessarily because I expect that the next Republican administration, that like President Carlson, is going to abide by it, but I do care about ethics, and I want a government that does too. Any other thoughts, Jordan?
I mean, on Jared Kushner running the Middle East peace process, I haven't been keeping up with the news. Is everything good there?
No, it's totally cool.
It's good. Everything.
He
solved the Israel-Palestine conflict. Good. All right, great. That's what happened.
They made
trusted confidant.
They just opened an ice skating rink. It's half in the West Bank, half not, and people just mix, and it's great. It's great. He nailed it. Anyway, with that, okay, I think we have time for one last story in this first hour, and we got way more coming after that. This is gonna be the end of the linear show after this story, but for those of you on YouTube and on Twitch, we got so much more, so stay tuned for that. But let's jump into this. Everybody seems to want a boogeyman, and China's the one for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's problems with our economy, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican. Demonizing China is a quick way to show that you care about America. But should that be the way that we comport ourselves? Well, Senator Bernie Sanders doesn't think so. And he has a new op-ed out, sort of pushing for people to tone down the inflammatory rhetoric when it comes to China and try to find more productive diplomatic ways that we can resolve our differences and hopefully both be better as a result of it. So I wanna give you just a few portions of this, but bear in mind, it is available at Foreign Affairs if you wanna read it. Senator Sanders says the unprecedented global challenges that the United States faces today, whether climate change, pandemics, nuclear proliferation, massive economic inequality, terrorism, corruption, authoritarianism, are shared global challenges. They cannot be solved by any one country acting alone. They require increased international cooperation, including with China, the most populous country on earth. It is distressing and dangerous, therefore, that a fast-growing consensus is emerging in Washington that views the US-Chinese relationship as a zero-sum economic and military struggle. The prevalence of this view will create a political environment in which the cooperation that the world desperately needs will be increasingly difficult to achieve. And so I'm gonna give you more in a little bit, but basically, there seems to be, whether there's any, like you can't even point to it, some sort of reason that we should result in something like Cold War 2.0, but with China, there's people who obviously want that situation, whether to fire up their base or because it allowed them to change certain trade policies to benefit a particular industry. So Jordan, I'm glad to at least have someone like sort of throwing up a hand and being like, hey, by the way, we don't need this Cold War. That's nice.
When I saw this on the rundown, I was so excited because this is something that I feel like is not talked about as enough from a progressive perspective. Even during the State of the Union, Biden made a couple comments about China, saying we're entering into an era of competition. They are, one of our chief rivals. Paraphrasing there, and has since ratcheted up tensions as they were preparing to take over. The State Department's kind of signaled, oh, we're pivoting to China as they exit Afghanistan and potentially finally leave Iraq. This is where they're headed next. It's China, it's Russia, and these are the two existential threats that we need to be worried about. Not just on the ground, they're also making the same case that if China gets into space, we have to get into space, and that's their argument for continuing to fund the Space Force. And further enriching Space Command, which are separate, and Space Command kind of runs the war, but Space Force provide logistical support. So they want to continue pushing money into these enterprises and these new arms of the military-industrial complex that, a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to China would, achieve all of these same foreign policy and militaristic goals that we used to have in the Middle East. Now that's kind of soured. One thing we need to be worried about, I cannot stress this enough, as we've seen the rise in anti-Asian American hate here as a result of how the Republicans smeared Asian Americans during COVID because of its origin from Wuhan. Do not accept this framework that China is our rival or that we are in competition with China, because as we increasingly have a chilled foreign policy with China and further declining diplomatic relations, you will see an uptick again in anti-Asian American hate.
Yes.
Because people aren't going to distinguish between what type of Asian person they are or be able to have a nuance. Oh, this is just about a strategic competition or geopolitical, whatever. They will see China is our enemy and these people here are our enemy. And you're going to see another increase in anti-Asian American hate. So do not accept this. The way to combat hate here is through diplomacy abroad. because war and militaristic tensions with these types of countries dehumanizes our opponent to a subhuman level. And that makes it much, much easier to dismiss any mistreatment, any discrimination, any hate, violence, killing, whatever. Do not accept this framework. I am so happy. I wish we could have had Bernie as president, because this is the foreign policy we need. We need a collectivist foreign policy to achieve these global goals, addressing climate change, addressing inequality. I appreciate his comments, and it's just my one message to the audience. Just please stress diplomacy. Don't accept this competitive framework.
I agree with literally everything you said. That was awesome. You're totally right. Yeah, the violence against Asian Americans hasn't gone away. In fact, I just saw in literally a 3-minute walk. I don't know exactly where on the particular boulevard, but there was an attack in Culver City yesterday, actually. So it's still happening. You're totally right. And there's a lot of people who, sometimes politicians, sometimes media. Tucker Carlson is happy to try to get his audience to love him a little bit more by whipping him up in a frenzy to hate China and by proxy Asian Americans. So yeah, no, we totally have to reject that. In some ways, by the way, pushing for a Cold War like this is more, at least economically insidious than a hot war in Iraq, because it's easier to sustain. The thing about the endless wars in the Middle East is you can only continue them for a couple of decades before people get sick of it. But a Cold War, you could go 50 years with that, because there's not necessarily dead soldiers. There's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars wasted needlessly, purposefully on military hardware. So we need to be as vigilant when it comes to setting up that sort of Cold War with a country like China or a country like Russia as we are with the hot wars. Oppose both. And thankfully Bernie is right on both of those issues. So that's awesome. Oh, and by the way, I want to jump to this last graphic of his, because he says Americans must not be naive about China's repression, disregard for human rights and global ambitions. I strongly believe that the American people have an interest in strengthening global norms that respect the rights and dignity of all people in the United States and China and around the world. We have to acknowledge all of those things of what's going on in China. But acknowledging those things is not calling for any sort of hot war or Cold War with China. Acknowledging those and then producing an actual diplomatic situation, that's the only way you're gonna change. Tension with China isn't gonna result in them respecting human rights more. No, we need to actually have some sort of interchange, cultural, political, economic, all of that. That's the only way that you're gonna get some sort of benefit to a variety of groups inside of China. So I agree on Bernie Sanders, wish he'd been president. Event. That is going to be the end of our first hour. So thank you to the linear audience. For those of you who are watching, whether on the app or on Twitch or on YouTube, we do have a lot more for you coming up, including our garbage people of the week, what happens with the McCloskeys. We've got so much, you're not gonna wanna miss it. We'll see you in just a few. Hey everybody over at YouTube and Twitch, welcome back to the show. We've got another about a half hour or so of fun stories to get to, and there will be the ceremonial filling of the trash can. That is coming up. Before we jump to that though, did want to let you know if you are living in the Ohio area, we've got an amazing event coming to your area very soon. Cenk Uygur, Nina Turner, and Killer Mike are going to be doing an economic justice town hall on June 26th. An actual live event with people in the same room, thankfully vaccinated. You can get more information at tyc.com/events for what's gonna be an amazing, you're definitely gonna wanna be there. They're gonna be talking about economic justice, basically, how we get to a living wage, how we push for these sorts of policies, and what she might do if she wins her election. So isn't that amazing? You can find out tyc.com events, find out more there. And wanted to thank a few people out in the audience, including Drakina Dragon, for becoming a tier 2 YouTube member, getting access to the top 10 list. Thank you for that. And Lord Harambe subscribing at tier 3. Lord Harambe is gonna thus be able to participate in the live Q&A that we do once a month. That's coming up next week. So Lord Harambe, good timing on that. Want to thank Alan Addison for a super chat saying, if the trash can is full, make a spectacle of taking out those at the bottom, commenting and shredding them. That's not a bad idea, actually. I'll try to remember what they're in there for. Rob Shively says, when you fill out an application for any job, they ask if you have any relatives in the company. Good enough for us, but we're the peasants. That's a good point. Yeah, I don't want people getting into politics to benefit their friends and family. Is that weird? Is that too much to ask? Anyway, Kevin says, it's sad that not even a global pandemic could get all of us to work together as a country. Too many people gone. Great show, guys. TYT is awesome. Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, with that, lots to get to, and we've got an overpacked rundown. The producers are probably already mad at me, so let's jump back into the news. You remember the McCloskeys? Well, if you're taking a look at that video, you probably do. Patricia McCloskey, her husband Mark McCloskey, have been engaged in a legal battle that has now resulted in them pleading guilty to misdemeanor crimes just yesterday. As a result of that, they're gonna have to forfeit the weapons that they brandished completely irresponsibly there at a group of protesters who happened to be walking by their home. So that's out there. Now, if you don't remember exactly what happened, let's give you a little close-up shot of this interaction. Protesters saying something to her and her doing a weird cosplay of an old-timey criminal. I don't know what she's going for there. Anyway, so she menaced the crowd with her finger on the trigger. Great finger discipline there. They're very responsible gun owners. She pleaded guilty to misdemeanor harassment, was ordered to pay a fine of $2,000. They live in what looks like a mansion, or a museum possibly. So I think they're gonna be able to do that. Her husband is gonna have to give up his AR-15. He was fined $750, which wouldn't even buy you a replacement AR-15. So that's cool. So I don't know, Jordan, is this justice? Like they came so close to accidentally killing protesters or intentionally killing protesters, and they're just gonna have to give up their guns. They can buy new ones, by the way. They're not barred from owning guns. They just can't use those guns.
I think this is everything they wanted, because this is, we're living in an era where even something that we all see objectively as repugnant and horrifying is to certain elements of the right an act of heroism, an act of bravery and courage, and that's why he's running for Senate. And it's just like this is horrifying. That this is the trajectory we're on, where people do things like this, just utterly deranged things that even 10 years ago would just, result in you being shunned from public life, is now what catapults you into a political career. So I'm deeply dismayed. Yeah. This is effectively a slap on the wrist, but these are also, I think both of them are lawyers. So I can't imagine that they would have found themselves in a situation where they actually were punished for anything or met with severe repercussions, because that's just how the justice system works. If you're rich or powerful or connected or educated, you're fine. It's the poor, it's the uneducated, it's the vulnerable, it's the weak, it's the sick. That's who really gets crushed under the weight of our system.
Totally true. They were fined, let's see, was $2,007, less than $3,000. They're gonna raise far more than that off of this. They're gonna use this to get money. That's how it works. You're right. This is how we pick our politicians, at least on the right. Did you do something awful? Are you a terrible person? Oh, good, I know who you are now. So I guess you're one of our leaders. And he's really trying to do that. I mean, he got to speak at the RNC. And we're gonna show you what he's doing now with his new fame. But he tweeted in response to the pleading saying, "A year ago, the mob came to my door to attack my family. I backed them down. The mob came for me, the media attacked me, and prosecutors tried to punish me for defending my family. They dropped all charges except for a claim I instilled imminent fear in the mob. I'd do it again." Which seems like if you're the judge in that, and like you give him this slap on the wrist, and then he says, "I'd do it again," shouldn't you do something about that? It doesn't seem like it worked. But anyway, so he hasn't learned anything, or at least he insists that he hasn't learned anything. The mob didn't come for him. The mob did not march to his house. They weren't going to hurt him or his family or his property. He didn't back them down. They were walking by his property and they menaced those protesters. That is the actual reality of what happened. But that sort of reality doesn't get you a political office. And he would very much like a political office, as you'll see in this video.
My name is Mark McCloskey. A year ago, an angry mob crashed through my gate and threatened my life, my family, and my home. And I stood on the front porch with my AR-15 and I backed the mob down. More recently, the prosecutor has dropped the charges against me, except for a claim that I purposely placed other people in imminent fear of physical harm. And by God, I did. And anytime they come to threaten me, I'll do the same thing again and again and again to protect myself, my home, my family, and our rights as human beings. A vote for McCloskey is a vote for standing your ground. Vote for me and we'll never back down.
Jordan, is there something wrong with me? How do these people look at that and think, that's strong, that's cool, that's alpha right there? I look at him and I think, you pathetic bastard, standing there with his gun like awkwardly held, and his wife's got a pistol. Like you're filming a campaign ad. What do you have your gun for? You guys were terrified that a protest was near your house. You're so scared all the time. Your constant state of terror is not strength. And I don't know why we need to teach Americans that pathetic people like this, rich bastards, talking about how constantly scared they are, in this case of black protesters, that's somehow strong, that's somehow admirable. I don't get so much about this country, Jordan. What do you think?
All I could see were ISIS videos, like when watching that. Like, how is that any different than some sort of fringe fundamentalist, radical terror cell video or message emerging from the Middle East? Like, this is like we see those and people clutch their pearls, and it's like, oh well, this reflects all Muslims. It's used to further our jingoism, but like, it's a jarring image when you see that. But like, we're replicating that here. When Boebert shows up for a committee hearing with guns behind her, or now this, he's just standing in front of a green screen, holding a gun with a cross necklace. Like this is a fundamentalist, dominionist, fascist movement that is emerging, and we have to squash it. There are going to be dozens more of McCloskeys in the next
they're desperate
few years. Yeah,
why wouldn't you? You either like, and McCloskey's not the worst. Like, Rittenhouse. I'm worried about people like you do terrible things with guns, and you are a hero. I'm really scared right now. Vote for me for Congress. That's effectively what we've set up. By the way, JYPZ Rocks on Twitch said Bunny and Claude. That's pretty funny. I hadn't heard that before. No, this is terrible. You're totally right. They would look at those, like terrorist videos of them like standing against rock walls with weapons and be like, that's terrible. But they're doing the same exact thing. He's wearing he's still wearing the polo and the Dockers or whatever, because I guess that's his uniform. That's his brand now. I don't know. I don't understand people. I don't know why that would be appealing to anyone other than this sort of implicit racism. I wish that we were better than that, but apparently we're not.
Yeah, but on that point, and to distinguish what we talked about, like a radical fringe cell out of the Middle East, Chip Crazy Hawaiian points out, like the difference is why people are okay with it here and not that is because the McCloskeys are white. If it was Cori Bush and her husband, or Nina Turner and her husband doing something like this in a political ad, the right would be in absolute hysterics. So it is because he is white that he gets away with this kind of stuff.
Exactly, and so he's got his gun. He's strong because he wasn't in any danger, but he had his gun. So if I run for Congress and you see me suit up in full plate mail and I'm holding a double-bladed axe and I'm like, I will stand for you. I saw a person. Am I strong? At least in that case, I have to get close to the person to defend myself. That is objectively cooler and stronger than the dude with the AR-15. I swear to God. If I had a samurai sword, if I was one of those kids, those memes, like that is cooler, but we don't treat it that way. No, you're supposed to get like, if I was to do a campaign ad with me straddling a cannon, can I get elected? Can I be like what, like a justice on the Supreme Court? I don't understand America. Anyway, we're running out of time. No, we're not gonna get to such good stories. Okay, well, we gotta do what we gotta do. So let's get ready for that. And to the director, let's have Jordan go first. I think that's only fair as we launch into this. Are we ready to do it? Okay, we're gonna see. I'm gonna read a couple super chats as we get ready. Actually, first I'm gonna thank Windchild on Twitch for subscribing for the 7th month. Thank you for that. Mother effing Woman Dragon, I see you gifting a sub. Thank you, thank you. Daisy Dragon says you should check out Apolitical Teen on TikTok. 16 and brilliant, further left than me, but absolutely brilliant. I'm going to look up this. Thank you. Okay, the Amazing Andrew subscribed for 5 months. Says happy Friday, everyone. My company gives Juneteenth off, so I get a 3-day weekend. Hope y'all are there. That's awesome. Man, that's amazing. When I found out that the holiday was going into effect right now, I actually asked on the company Slack, can I go home? I couldn't, it turned out. But anyway, so we're ready to go? Okay, let's do this. It's the end of the week, and so it's time to take out the trash. Oh, it was a trashy week indeed. Lots of political garbage out there. Jordan, we don't often have you on garbage day. Who's your political garbage person of the week?
My garbage person of the week is somebody who I think TYT folks should pay attention to, and I think will likely end up in the garbage again over the next year. This is somebody who has, blocked progress specifically on making Juneteenth a holiday, who was recently kicked off of YouTube for spreading COVID misinformation at the onset of the pandemic. This person was basically like just created like a set number of people, which ended up in the millions, that he would be okay with dying if we reopened the country. And has just like really become one of the worst, most unhinged right-wing hatchet men in the Senate, and really has not gotten the same type of like fury and outrage as other Republican senators has. So someone to watch out for. It's someone who does have a progressive challenger should he run again in 2022. So my garbage person of this week is Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin.
Is a great garbage person. Ron Johnson is such a, first of all, I don't remember hearing anything out of Ron Johnson before like 6 months ago. And then all of a sudden Ron Johnson's everywhere.
He's terrible.
And
yeah, he sucks.
How is he a senator? Like, I've never heard him say, I'm not even gonna like expect a smart thing. I've never heard him say a rational thing, like one rational thing. He's a senator. And I know, like you're like, wait, John, you are implying you have standards. I get that we're past that or whatever. He's not just a congressperson, he is a literal senator. There's only 100 of them, and it's supposed to be the greatest deliberative body in the world. He's total garbage. And what's he garbage on? Well, that's gonna depend on the week. Sometimes it's COVID, sometimes it's elections, sometimes all sorts of stuff. But you're totally right. There's seemingly no redeeming quality to him. And a lot of it's, I'm assuming, a combination of they're stupid, sure, but they're dishonest and they're trolling. Like, did you see in the last day he said he's worried that after the Biden-Putin meeting, he's worried that Biden is compromised by Putin. not worried about that. It's just a senator who believes that trolling is like the point. That's what senators are for.
Yeah, he's really picked up on like the Trump just saying anything to get headlines, and he's identified this like I don't know what it is, just like a very clear one-to-one connection where if he says something stupid or outlandish, the media will run with it, and he's just using it to build up his profile. For what if he ends up going to be an executive or a lobbyist or whatever after, if he doesn't run for re-election, sure, but like he might be doing it just to like whip up his base in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, has now a resurgent progressive presence. Ben Wickler, my former colleague at Move On, now runs the Democratic Party there, and that guy is an amazing organizer. And now Mandela Barnes is likely going to run as the Democrat in the general in 2022. So that's going to be tough because Mandela Barnes is a good he's a fine progressive. He might not be like as left as Ilhan or Bernie that we might like, but like he's better than Ron Johnson, so I would argue. And at a moment where we need every possible Senate seat we can get, that is a key one and a winnable one. So Ron Johnson is just losing his mind, I think, and it shows in his comments.
Yeah, or pretending to lose his mind because he knows that that's what conservatives want. I don't know which it is. They're both bad. I don't like either. Total garbage. That is a great garbage person of the week. My garbage person of the week is actually quite a few people. It's a little bit, is it fair? Are you supposed to do that, John? Come on, that's not the thing. But no, they're all tied together. And it all has to do with the recent passing of Juneteenth into becoming a national holiday. So that has happened. That is good. It is good to know your history. It is a reward for those who've been fighting for literally decades to have recognition for this. It's obviously not the end of a whole bunch of problems with America and racism and all that. And so anyone, whether it's a politician or a rando or a corporation who's like, oh good, we're done now. No, we're not. But that said, yeah, you should at least be able to do this. We should at least be able to say, good. That's a good thing, but not everyone can rise to even that low standard. So my garbage people are all the people along the way that are just so mad about the fact that it's become a holiday. And that starts with the 14 Republicans who voted against it in the House. Senate was unanimous, by the way. Even Ron Johnson, who blocked it a year ago, voted for it now. So you have 14 Republicans voting against it. And I just want to give credit to Parker Malloy, who used an app to combine all of their faces. And it does look like exactly the sort of person that would vote against Juneteenth. So thank you, Parker, for that. By the way, Trump supported it becoming a federal holiday. Trump would send out letters like celebrating it. Trump, the first year of his presidency, didn't acknowledge on the Holocaust Remembrance Day that Jewish individuals were killed. He still acknowledged Juneteenth, but these 14 Republicans were against it. But it's not just them, it's also people in media. Like Tucker Carlson, who had to get in a snippy thing about it. Take a look at this video.
Starting this Saturday, our country is getting a new Independence Day to supplant the old one, which people like Lori Lightfoot complained was racist. Not a single member of either party in the Senate opposed it. Republicans, in fact, co-sponsored the resolution. Happy that my bill to recognize Juneteenth as a national holiday just passed the Senate, wrote John Cornyn, a supposedly conservative senator from Texas. Lori Lightfoot is thrilled by this. Unlike John Cornyn, Lori Lightfoot understands the power of symbols. They're immensely important, that's why we have them. For Flag Day on Monday, a holiday designed to honor the American flag, speaking of symbols, Lori Lightfoot is flying something instead called the Pan-African flag. You're seeing a shot of it on your screen right now. It's now up in City Hall in Chicago. That and the Juneteenth flag.
Okay, we kept the context in there just in case you thought there was some issue, some reason he's opposing Juneteenth becoming a holiday that's not just an outgrowth of racism. No, it's just the racism. He's not doing that thing where it's like, well, I'm worried there's too many holidays that Ron Johnson hid behind. No, he's just like, no, I hate all of this stuff. Yeah, so John Cornyn is now supposedly conservative because he supported Juneteenth becoming a holiday, which Donald Trump also did. That's all it takes to no longer be a conservative to Tucker Carlson. But it isn't just Tucker Carlson, it's others like Charlie Kirk, who had previously, under the Republicans, been in support of it becoming a holiday. Now that it's the Democrats, not so much. He says making Juneteenth the federal holiday isn't about emancipation of slaves. If it was, they would make September 22nd, Emancipation Proclamation Day, a federal holiday. This is about replacing July 4th, just like the 1619 Project is about replacing 1776. Conservatives must reject this. See, here's the thing about that assertion that it's replacing July 4th. It didn't. July 4th is still a holiday, you moron. He goes on to say, because he was tweeting a bunch about this, Lincoln knew America's founding was July 4th. He knew that the day our amazing nation made a step from ideal to reality. Juneteenth is an affront to the unity of July 4th. We now have 2 summer holidays, and one of them is based on race. Shame on the GOP for supporting this. We have 2 holidays in the summer. Summer is not the time for holidays. You can't have 2, obviously. But as pathetic as all that is, and he went on. We also have Candace Owens, who had this to say: Juneteenth is so lame. Democrats really need to stop trying to repackage segregation. I'll be celebrating July 4th and July 4th only. I'm American. So she's only supporting only July 4th. No Veterans Day, no Labor Day, no anything. There's one holiday, damn it. Well, I'll be celebrating July 4th. You know why? Because I like hot dogs. But I'm also gonna be celebrating Juneteenth. Jordan, that was a lot, I apologize. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you could do both. I mean, Juneteenth has been a holiday in Texas for decades. It passed unanimously in the Senate. Now, thanks to, again, our other garbage person, Ron Johnson, finally relinquishing his block on that becoming a holiday. And some of the justifications were, oh, it costs so much to have a new federal holiday. It'll cost so much money. Where was that concern with the war on terror? Like, where's the concern with as we just continue to pump money into the Space Force? No, it's things like this that are nice nods and not sufficient in rectifying our past misdeeds, but it's in part it's okay, and it's obviously bipartisan. But the racial animus in this country cannot be overstated, and it's something that the media, the right-wing media, will pounce on because it divides the country, and they want that.
You're totally right. You're totally right. So that's my garbage person. But what about you? Well, 18,000 of you voted for the community garbage person of the week. And here are the top 5. Coming in at number 5 this week is Lauren Boebert with 4% of the vote for competing with Marjorie Greene to be the most insane Republican. Hey, Ron Johnson's in there too. Number 4 at 6% of the vote is Greg Abbott for continuing to build Trump's failed border wall, now with donations. Number 3 of Kayleigh McEnany at 13% of the vote for claiming she never lied for Trump. Was that really this week? Jesus, a lot happens in a week. Number 2 at 21% of the vote is Laura Trump for telling border residents to get guns and be ready. And number 1, our garbage person, community garbage person of the week with 57% of the vote is Mitch McConnell for pledging to block future Biden Supreme Court nominees. I'll throw in also he wants to block the voting rights legislation. That is your garbage person. Thank you to all of you who voted. Really do appreciate that. And thank you also to Jordan. Jordan, you're the best. Thank you for joining us on the Damage Report. It's always great to have you here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone. You can check out Deep Dive on Twitch. Everyone should be subscribed on Twitch. But coming up right after this, we're about to go to break. We've got Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Now, if you're already watching on YouTube, that's great. Although you should head to youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. If you're on Twitch, you definitely should go to youtube.com/indisputable_TYT, subscribe there, and you'll be able to watch the entire run of Indisputable. It's gonna be awesome. I will be leading the first hour of the Young Turks later on today, the power panel with Cenk Uygur and Wozni Lambre. It's gonna be amazing. You're not gonna wanna miss it. Until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, what's happening? Welcome. Indisputable. We got a great show today. It is Friday. We're gonna make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot on the agenda. Obviously, we have another I Wish a Karen Would. You don't wanna miss that segment. And the bullpen. We have an interesting fella stepping into the bullpen today. But ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, I will introduce my co-host. This is really a treat. Producer, host of Happy Half Hour and the Sunday Stream on Twitch. We got Brett Erlich, but not right now. In just a moment, we got him coming up. Juneteenth. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of white supremacists who are upset about Juneteenth. Yes, Candace Owens, the leader of all white supremacists in the United States of America. It seems as if Candace Owens, she is particularly upset about the audacity of Democrats and Republicans coming together to pass such an egregious piece of legislation known as Juneteenth. Now let's break down what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth is not a policy. Just imagine if they would have passed something like the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act. I mean, damn, Candace may explode. Imagine if they would have passed, I don't know, HR 1 or possibly the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Can Candace Owens handle something like that? So she's very upset that these Democrats and Republicans came together to pass this legislation. Not a policy, but a holiday. I have my feelings about that. I think Juneteenth is a good thing, but Juneteenth is not the goal. However, I'm not upset that we have a holiday celebrating independence in the United States of America. Let's be very honest. The first Independence Day we celebrate in this country is not really Independence Day because you still had slavery inside of the nation. Ultimate freedom is when everyone can be free. Juneteenth is not just a black holiday. It's not just a holiday to celebrate our reality of transitioning from a place of slavery to a place of freedom. It is something to be celebrated by everyone and a place where we should reflect on not only the evils of this country, but also the remedy as well. But once again, the white supremacist Candace Owens, she's very upset about this Juneteenth federal holiday. Here's some of what she said.
Obviously, I'm being hyperbolic, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen these Chinese kids on calculators. They're absurd. While our children are being told that they should major in gender studies, while our children can't pass basic mathematic exams, while our children are completely illiterate, especially Black Americans, obviously being the group that is suffering the most academically because they're being told that they need critical race theory. They need to learn about race and slavery and Juneteenth. Did I mention Juneteenth? We need a holiday to celebrate Juneteenth. That's what our politicians should be doing. Our communities are completely distressed, but hey, let's do Juneteenth. Candace is a bad person. Let's all go talk about Candace while their children are able to calculate things that the average American child would just be completely lost in a classroom with 5-year-olds that are Chinese. I mean,
Candace Owens, who is telling everyone else that they are being manipulated and dumb, she literally makes her living off of dumb white people. If you looked at the comments that were coming on her stream, these individuals were actually contributing money to Candace Owens. They were literally giving her money. The more she said against black people and the more she fought against the idea of Juneteenth, the more money she received. And she decided to do this for a long time so that she could keep banking. Let's be very clear about who Candace Owens is. She is the epitome of sellout. Literally a sellout in the community. What does that mean? You see, you don't have to be black to be a sellout. You are literally taking money to take a position adversarial to the community that you represent. She is still a black woman. I am embarrassed that she's a black woman, but she's also embarrassed that she's a black woman. We need to go ahead, call up the black delegation, and we need to have a conversation. Somebody needs to trade Candace Owens. Here's something else that Candace said.
Juneteenth is going to be the beginning of a very long process of creating even more divisive pieces of legislation, divisive rhetoric. I mean, it boggles my mind that you've had all this time and you still do not understand how you are being manipulated. It's just, it honest to God, It drives me crazy. I just want people to be smarter, okay? Nobody in the entire world celebrates the end of slavery, okay? The Africans still have slavery. There is no holidays in Africa celebrating the end and the beginning or the going-ons of the various slavery mechanisms they have going on. I'm not saying that the end of slavery wasn't good. I am saying that you need to recognize that you are being manipulated and you are being controlled and you are being divided in your own country because another country is trying to take you over. That's it. That's my TED Talk. Happy Juneteenth.
The dumb in this one runs deep. You see, there are some people who are simply not fixable. So understand, I'm not trying to change the mind of Candace Owens. I'm literally exposing a reality that exists not only in the context of Black America, but in the context of America, because literally she makes money on bashing Black people and Black culture. To talk more about this and the chop up news of the day with me, I got my big homie Brett. Brett.
Hello there. I love this so much because it's just every layer of it is either hypocrisy or just, I love when someone says we need to be smarter and their argument is dumb.
Right.
Like, let's just face value. She like shoehorns every talking point she's been rehearsing into one 16-minute video that she did on her Instagram live. So it has to do with China taking us over and us being stupid, and Juneteenth is exposing us as being stupid. I just want to focus on that Chinese argument that she's making. Like, here is Candace Owens from Toilet Paper USA basically telling everybody, like, we can't have socialism, any government program is terrible. By your own admission, the Chinese school system is better than the American school system. Do you think they have like charter schools there? Like,
that's a great point, Brett.
The most public, that's a communist country that you're saying is awesome. If I was Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk listening to Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk talk like this, I would say, Candace Owens loves China and wants us to become communists so our children can turn into calculators. Like, that's just a barnacle on the stupid whale of this video that she has made.
And it's really interesting, and you make a great point, Brett, because basically you have Candace Owens bashing other countries while at the same time illuminating the greatness it produces. I don't fall for the talking point of communism being evil or socialism being evil or even Marxism as a historical analytical construct being evil. But Republicans, conservatives, and especially in the Trumpite movement, they have been successful at messaging these terms, and as soon as they drop one of those bombs, everybody gets back as if it is something destructive. Here's the reality of communism. Communism, socialism, all of these isms combined have not created the death and carnage of capitalism. Capitalism, if you look at it from a social, political, economic standpoint, has created more violence on this planet than any other ism known to man.
Right, I have a lot of thoughts on communism and whether it has ever happened, and it hasn't. Whether it can happen, and I don't think it can happen. I think socialism is a very let's talk about the here and now effects of what a social program can do, and on its basic level, like the police is a socialist program. So
exactly,
she gets so far into it, but she doesn't want to. She doesn't want you say socialism, and that is not. When she says socialism, it is not a criticism of any policy in specific or as a whole. Socialism is like yelling the name of your favorite team to her. It just gets other people to go, yeah, buzzword, rah, I'm in. Even though she just argues for essentially a fully government controlled education system there. But I love, specifically, she also had this tweet today where she goes, Juneteenth is so lame. Democrats really need to stop trying to repackage segregation. I'll be celebrating July 4th and July 4th only. I'm American. I love this, the only Independence Day is July 4th. It's like so wait, should we only have one holiday ever? That's insane to me. Yes. If July 4th is celebrating our independence from England, how does independence from slavery affect your ability to eat a hot dog in a park? Like, yeah. It's just they get so caught up in it. They can't even, I mean, and there's tons of people that are trying to make that kind of a point where it's like, okay, the government is making these arguments about, the government is passing like a ceremonial holiday, but they're not getting to like the meat of what is actually the issue, the issues that face race relations in America. But like Charlie Kirk today was talking about how Juneteenth is a stupid holiday. We should celebrate Emancipation Day. And it's like, well, let's talk about the difference between Juneteenth and Emancipation Day. Emancipation Day is not in the same year as Juneteenth.
Right.
Juneteenth was years later when news finally got to Texas. And that's what
the idea.
Yeah.
That's the idea, right? The idea is not only did it take a while, 2 years to get to Texas, it was by intention. It was intentionally withheld from enslaved individuals in Texas and other places. But I do find it just really, really ironic that you have a Candace Owens who continues to spew hate and negativity, specifically about black culture, while at the same time celebrating the most abhorrent and the most extreme elements of white culture as if it is something to be accepted, such as white nationalism. She's okay with that. White supremacy, she's nodded and winked at that. Donald Trump, she supports that, but she's critical of everything black, all right? Okay, we got more stuff. Really, really interesting. Body cam footage, retired NYPD officer at January 6th insurrection. On Thursday, the Justice Department released a new body cam footage. It was horrible. After CNN and other outlets have spent months requesting access to the videos used in court against the January 6th defendants. The footage released yesterday was used in the case against Thomas Webster, a former Marine and retired NYPD officer who participated in the Capitol attack. This is the second public disclosure of new footage from the deadly January 6th insurrection, coming after a judge ordered prosecutors to release videos used in the Capitol riot court cases. Let's go to the CNN body camera breakdown.
So this video came out today because CNN and other news outlets were pushing in court for the DOJ to release videos like these from the Capitol riot. You're seeing it right now. The guy who's gonna come on your screen in the red jacket. Prosecutors say that he is Thomas Webster. He's a former Marine. He's a former NYPD cop. And this footage shows him attacking other cops on the other side of that line who were defending the Capitol. As you said, he was shown here wielding a pipe. That pipe was eventually wrestled away by the officer, but not before Webster, in the red here. You can see him throwing that cop to the ground. There are pictures of him grabbing at the officer's face. This is just one of the many brutal scenes from January 6th. And we're finally, even all these months later, starting to get a glimpse.
Former cop, former Marine, current terrorist. That's who this is. He has been charged with several federal crimes, including assaulting police, unlawfully entering the Capitol grounds with a dangerous weapon, and civil disorder. He has pleaded not guilty on all of these charges. Now, here's what will not happen. You will not hear any criticism of this terrorist who attacked a cop from the right. You will not hear Republicans stand up and say they support individuals who are in uniform, police officers, because in this context, it does not fit their narrative. So please understand when they tell you they are for the boys in blue, and I'm talking to any cop that may see this, they are not actually for you. They are for an ideology that stands up against what? Against freedom. Their ideology stands up against progress for black and brown people when it comes to police reform. It is simply a political ideology that they're lifting up. They're not lifting you up. You are a pawn in their chess game. To every cop who sees this, you are a pawn in their game. Stop being that. Because if they actually stood up for you, they would have criticized aggressively this terrorist who attacked one of your colleagues at the United States Capitol. But I guarantee you, you won't hear a damn word from these Republicans because they don't care about you. Brett?
What's most confusing to me is, well, it's confusing, but it's also very obvious. Like you'll see Tucker Carlson, Louis Gohmert, Matt Gaetz. They're all saying all these things in hearings and in front of the cameras. Like, why are we not seeing any video of January 6th? What are they hiding? And then you'll see a video, oh, the FBI's co-conspirators and their informants were there. They're talking about what? I think Tucker Carlson, there's 4 unidentified co-conspirators, or two individuals. And there's other people like Clyde and Ron Johnson who are saying these folks during the Capitol, I don't want to call it an insurrection, they acted like a tour group that were just kind of walking around having a nice time. They are asking, where's the footage? The reason they can't see it is because they're turning a blind eye to all of this stuff, which we're showing right now of the actual fights that broke out. And so they just want to keep having this nebulous conversation that they only give like little talking points to all their minions to feel like they have something to come back with if, God forbid, they're cornered into watching a video of what we all know happened. That doesn't mean that we're not still asking questions. This doesn't mean I'm not still asking questions about what happened on January 6th. I have more questions about this guy, who he was with, who he was around, where he's taking his cues from. But they only want you to ask like 2 questions. Those questions are okay about FBI and BS conspiracy theories. My questions about like who was talking to the Republican Congress people when this was going on and what were they doing? Those questions are off limits for them.
See, I have a theory, and I think you hit it right on the nail on the head here. I believe the reason why the January 6th commission was a flat out no from Republicans, even though some of them said, maybe we'll consider it. I think eventually they got the knowledge. They were in receipt of the knowledge that some of their colleagues are wrapped up in this foolishness. And they in fact are connected to an insurrection against the United States government, a terrorist attack on the Capitol. And I don't think they want that to ever come out. Now, we see videos like this. You're gonna see more videos like this. This will not be a silo, a one-off. I think this will end up being the norm, that you will see scrimmages like this, and there will be a massaging of it by people like Tucker Carlson and others who will eventually claim that somebody was an undercover FBI agent and a co-conspirator, and that's why all of this happened in the first place, completely contrary to the truth. At this point, I'm willing to stand and say somebody like a Tucker Carlson and people that are in his vein, they're not reporters, they're not broadcasters, they're entertainers. That is all they are today, 100% entertainers.
And that's their argument, by the way, when they get called out. Their legal argument is that they're not news people. They want to play it both ways. They want to be the #1 name in sports, or but in the #1 name in news, but they're trying to play this off as a sport, like they're just sports commentators talking about the highlights of what they think was best for their team. Tucker Carlson literally was called out in a court of law for misinformation and for essentially inspiring people to do things, and he says, "You're not supposed to take me seriously. I'm just an entertainer." They try to play it both ways.
Yeah, and before we go to a break, I really hope cops get it together. Stop being used like this. Many of y'all know better. All right, you know these cats aren't really for you. You know these guys don't really have your back. But as long as you continue to allow them to control your narrative, if you don't embrace police reform, these are going to be your allies, individuals who will turn a blind eye to an actual terrorist attack. You don't want these guys as your terrorists because these Republicans ain't loyal. All right, we got more on the other side, indisputable.
Can you name the representative of your district?
The representative of my district, oof.
I have no idea.
I actually don't know who the representative of my district is.
Do you know what the corporate tax rate is?
I think it's pretty high. I should know this.
Like maybe between 20-25%. I don't know.
How many amendments are in the US Constitution?
Oh no.
This brings me back to grade school.
I should know this because I was a history major, but I do not remember.
I don't know that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no clue.
Nope. I don't know the answer to that one.
You don't know? I didn't know. It's time to change that. We live in the best country in the world. We live in the most powerful country in the world. We love our American freedom, but only half of us take part in the political process. Only half of us vote. We don't fulfill our duties as US citizens to make this country a better place. It's time that we use our voices as a team, as a country, to become better. We will stand up. We will be empowered. We will stay educated and informed about politics every single day because it's our responsibility. And Politiscope just made it easy for you. So join me, join us, and let's be Americans.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse us and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me read some of these viewer comments. Okay, don't forget, if you're watching me on the Damage Report live stream, YouTube, make sure you join me right now on the on Indisputable TYT YouTube page now. Make sure you do that. Also follow me on social media, Indisputable TYT, Instagram, Twitter. Hashtag Indisputable TYT so we can read your comment as well. Let's get to some of these viewer comments. TYT member Cray Souffle says, you're correct, Brett. Candace Owens is a true barnacle of sellout blacks. Yeah. Maza, again, the model minority stereotype. Not all Chinese are good or excellent at math. That's correct. Nostra Science says, July 4th is technically based on keeping race-based slavery going here in the United States. You don't think all that freedom and inalienable rights of men stuff actually applied to blacks, do you? The July 4th Declaration of Independence was our declaration of slavery dependence, which is an argument that many black scholars have made for many, many years. In Gulliver says, so let me get this straight. We're behind in education and you're mad about a holiday not during the school year. Right. Nicole Smith, here's a question. Why do we celebrate 1776 when the Revolutionary War ended in 1787? Chris Nesbitt,
That's when we ratified the Constitution, guys.
Yeah.
That's when we ratified the Constitution 1787. Maybe 1789, but yeah, 1776 is when we were like, I'm not you anymore.
Right.
They signed it.
Chris Nesbitt says, great to see Brett again, and always great to see you, Dr. Richey. Thank you. Great to see you as well on this screen here, your wording. Lawrence Wells, Brett, you still on the secret mission to recruit giants for Dumbledore? Wait, that's Harry Potter. Dr. Richey, you maintain your composure in the bullpen, facing such ignorance. How do you do it? Here's the thing, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just flat lose it with some of these guys, okay? Cranky Bookworm, math and history are different subjects, Candace. Good stuff, can't read them all. Okay, but thank you so much for commenting. Thank you for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, this is interesting. You know, we go around the country making sure that we highlight all of the Karens of the world. It's just too many for one man to cover. But ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would. Here's what we have today. We will call this one Swimming Pool Karen. Swimming Pool Karen with her other Karens and at least one male Karen. And I know we called them something else. What do we call them, Brett? Our
I
male
feel like
Karen.
Ken and Keith are real close.
Close, and then I heard
Darren,
somebody else
maybe?
call it a Chad. I don't know. I'm just going to stick to the male Karen, okay? So you had all of these Karens at a swimming pool, and there's this one in particular who was just really upset because two black women at the swimming pool had the audacity to show some love and affection. Now I want you to remember that this Karen started to curse, started to flip people off because she said the affection was just too egregious and that it should not be done publicly. But she was okay with cursing and flipping people off publicly at the same location. Here's part of that video.
How is that? That's shame.
Yeah, so she comes up, flips the bird, black women kissing, showing some affection. Now, let me say this. This Karen is obviously both racist and homophobic. If you are racist and homophobic, which typically they run together, by the way, a situation like this is really your personal hell. To come up against two black women kissing or holding hands or showing some level of affection, I mean, goodness, are we putting too much pressure on Karens of the world? Are we? Here's the other video.
Do you guys have any children? Do you have any children? Good, because you'd be a terrible dad. You'd be a terrible dad. What is wrong with you? I have never met anybody like you guys.
Lady, do the homework.
Are you
My God,
I've been more embarrassed in my life than you. I am a Jewish woman from New Jersey. You're a disgusting piece of
kids here still. Still have kids here. You're suburban. Suburban.
I live in Oakland.
Gentrified. Gentrified. Good one.
You're a loser and a loser of the
Kettleman is the other name for the mayor, Karen. I finally got it. The patrons at this hotel, one in particular yelling shame, shame, shame. Good for that fella. And remember, the Karen in question, she proclaims that she's a Jewish woman. And because of this Jewish heritage, obviously, she's not able to be racist against black people or homophobic. But it's very clear that she is deathly disturbed by this display at a hotel that people have paid to be at, by the way, in order to be on vacation. So I find it ironic that this Karen says this is inappropriate to do because obviously Karens own everything they come in contact with. This is her hotel and this is her pool. But then she decides to flip off people at this pool, curses, And obviously to her, that is actually appropriate behavior. Brett?
I love it. I love this. This has all that, because like I feel like we should have some kind of scorecard with like check boxes to see, because not only is it like she needs to get a lot of points as a Karen for how non-inconvenienced she was relative to her overreaction, right? Like this isn't that someone came up and tried to kiss her. This isn't that someone wouldn't let her into the pool because she was kissing someone else. This is two Karens and a Kentleman and a Kimpton. Very difficult to say, but there's a lot of K's in there. Note the irony. And just seeing people kissing is such a giant problem for her that they need to then file out and make their grievances known. The other thing that it has, Starbucks. What is it about Karen that she always has like a venti iced latte, a Trenti or whatever it is? Like that is just so, that's the uniform right there. Like if you're putting together your Halloween outfit for Karens, you gotta go get like a giant iced latte that you have drunk already. And that's how she gets her power, by the way. That's the Karen hilarious. Fuel. And then the Oakland part, like, listen, it's the proximity argument. Like, listen, I'm not racist. I live in Oakland. Like, there are black people there. I don't want to say it, but there are. And it did bring down my property values, but that's why I bought cheap and I'm gonna sell pretty soon. Like that's the amazing irony where you just have to, like I know a lot of people like this, you just kind of have to tease out of them like, so why are you in Oakland? Why did you say that? And then
why she said it.
Yeah,
it's the proximity argument that you just said. And number one, she admitted she's a gentrifier. All right, that's number one. Irresponsible displacement of black people. She's engaged in that activity. And so she just admitted it because she doesn't actually connect that activity to anything biased or racist, because she's literally trying to make a point or to make a case that she is not in fact a racist individual. But once again, we go back to a pattern. Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery, okay? Maybe they think they should still own black people. And I wanna say this about gentrification and a term that we know as white flight, when black people move into a community and white people move out. And you will ask people, well, why do you think this happens? And they will say things like, well, because violence increases when black people move to communities. Number one, not true statistically. And number two, that's just a damn lie. Because there was a time in this country, Brett, where the more black people you had in your neighborhood, the better off you were as a white person. It was called a plantation. So they were okay with having as many black people on their plantation as they could stand. Black people in the house, black people outside the house, as long as those black people were owned by them. See, the issue is you don't get to own the black people today. And because you can't own them and tell them what to do and make them stay in their place, they become problematic just because you have the skin color moving into your communities that you don't like. Interesting stuff. All right, we got more. This is not really an oldie, but kind of, all right? Remember those two attorneys who decided to come out with their guns and threaten to kill black people? Well, obviously they became very popular among Republicans, among Trumpites. This was just a real badass who came out and did this. So in St. Louis, video went viral. These individuals are pointing semi-automatic weaponry at a group protesting. They are part of the Black Lives Matter protest. They pleaded guilty to misdemeanors. The charges were initially 4th degree assault, a class C misdemeanor, and 2nd degree harassment, a class A misdemeanor. Neither will face any jail time whatsoever. Mark McCloskey pleaded guilty to 4th degree assault and faces a $750 fine. Patricia McCloskey pleaded guilty to 2nd degree harassment and must pay a $2,000 fine according to court documents. They will pay total $2,750. And here is good old Mark talking after the verdict.
This is a good day for the McCloskeys, I can tell you that. The prosecutor dropped every charge except for alleging that I purposely placed other people in imminent risk of physical injury, right? And I sure as heck did. That's what the guns were there for. And I'd do it again. Anytime the mob approaches me, I'll do what I can to place them in imminent threat of physical injury, because that's what kept them from destroying my house and my family.
Naturally, he hasn't learned a damn thing. And this prosecutor really should be ashamed of himself or herself, because typically when you get a plea like this arranged, there are some other things that the person must do. Number one, say you've learned your lesson and you won't do it again. Offer a public apology. Say that you are repentant for what happened. Something. This guy came out guns blazing. Not only saying what he did was justified, but proclaiming he would do it again. It doesn't stop there. The privilege in these two run deep. He's actually running for Senate. Here's proof of that.
I will never back down.
Mark McCloskey announcing his run for Senate in Missouri.
When the angry mob came to destroy my house and kill my family, I took a stand against them. Now I'm asking for the privilege to take that stand for all of us.
Fully embracing the gun brandishing moment that catapulted him into the national spotlight last summer.
God came knocking on my door last summer, disguised as an angry mob, and it really did wake me up.
Okay, I don't know exactly where to start, but let me start with this. He points a gun at peaceful protesters that did not try to attack him, really didn't even step on his property. He was charged with a crime, they were not. He ends up pleading guilty to a lesser offense because the system works for him. He pleads guilty to this lesser offense. He is not contrite about the situation. He says now it's time for him to become a US Senator. You know why he can become a US Senator in this atmosphere? Because he pointed a gun and said he would kill black people. That's why. And he is now popular inside of the Republican ranks. Let me make a bold prediction today. It is going to be tough to beat this guy in a Republican primary because of where the Republican Party is today. They are no longer the Republican Party. They are the party of Trump. This is a Trumpite. Trump gave this person cover and will probably officially endorse this clown during this senatorial run. Brett, what are your thoughts?
I love it. I mean, it is in all ways just symptomatic of so many things that are so wrong. So first of all, that group of people was in his gated community, walking past his house to the mayor's house. That's what they were doing. That is proven. They only engaged with this guy when he came out with a gun to point it at people. Also, real big dude over there whose wife has like the bigger fine than he does, even though he has the bigger rifle. I think he's compensating for something. And I love that he knows he looks a fool in this first video that we're seeing right now, because in his campaign video, he throws on a flannel. Like he's like, oh, I took the note. My pink, tight-fitted Brooks Brothers polo isn't as becoming with my pleated pants situation, so I'm gonna up the ante. And he's like, they tried to kill him and take his house? No, no one did any of that. If you look into this guy's relationship with his neighbors, period, it is a mess. Next to him is like a kibbutz type thing. It's like a Jewish, I think it's like a rabbi's house or some kind of Jewish thing. And they're like, they have a beehive for honey and it's all contained, and he tried to get rid of that. Where everybody was, as you point out, no one in that group, that bloodthirsty mob he felt the need to threaten with a gun, was ever in trouble for anything other than being caught up and having their life now on record threatened and endangered by this guy, this ambulance chasing TV lawyer who now is gonna seek Roy Blunt's spot as he vacates the Senate.
Yeah, it is quite ironic that you have an individual who committed a crime. No one cared about him or his wife. They walk past his house. He creates a situation to turn the attention away from what they are there for so that they can pay attention to him. And then he utilizes it as a catalyst to launch his political career. I mean, he is going to make a damn fine politician.
Yeah.
This guy, my goodness. All right, The gift that keeps on giving. Matt Gaetz, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, can I just say this on the record? They should have known something was wrong with this guy by how he does his hair in the morning, okay? Matt Gaetz, who is being investigated for child sex trafficking, is still connected on a tour with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. The Republican Party has failed to say anything really critical of Matt Gaetz. He is still on major committees. He is still able to fundraise. The audacity of this individual, staggering. If I had this kind of confidence, ladies and gentlemen, I would be your president of the United States right now, in this very moment. But I don't have this kind of confidence that Matt Gaetz obviously possesses. So Matt Gaetz, under investigation. The investigation is now kind of combined with some other things politically in Florida. Let me remind you that I just covered a story yesterday on the show where a GOP congressional candidate tried to put a hit out, or proclaimed he was going to put a hit out on a political opponent. I mean, damn, they rolling like this in the Republican Party in the state of Florida. And by the way, Republicans aren't coming out against that individual either, because they have lost any ability to be moral or ethical in this climate of who they have devolved into. Okay, the federal investigation with assistance from Gaetz' associate, the former Seminole County tax collector, Joel Greenberg, has now ramped up its focus. Now they are looking at corruption and fraud. Greenberg reached a plea deal last month and is prepared to hand over evidence and testimony that could implicate Gaetz and others. Also in recent weeks, investigators have started interviewing more women who were allegedly introduced to Gaetz through Greenberg. The former tax collector pleaded guilty in May to a host of crimes, including charges of stalking, identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to bribe a public official, as well as a sex trafficking charge. Here's some video.
The political future for Congressman Matt Gaetz really hanging in the balance here as we learn more details about the scope of the investigation. Not only has it been going on for months, we are told that it stretches beyond Florida and that multiple witnesses have already been interviewed.
This morning, the investigation into whether Congressman Matt Gaetz had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old sending shockwaves through Washington. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy saying if those allegations turn out to be true, Gaetz will lose his committee assignments.
Those are serious implications. If it comes out to be true, yes, we would remove him if that was the case. But right now, as Matt Gaetz says, it is not true and we don't have any information. So let's get all the information.
But Democrats say more needs to be done. Gaetz sits on the Judiciary Committee, which has congressional oversight of the Justice Department. Sources say that investigation has been going on for months. It started during the Trump administration. Bill Barr, who was the Attorney General then, was briefed multiple times. And this morning, we're learning the inquiry into his conduct stretches beyond his home state of Florida, and that federal authorities have already interviewed multiple witnesses. Investigators are looking to see whether Gaetz paid for travel expenses for the teen.
And we're also learning this morning that Gaetz has been reaching out to multiple attorneys seeking representation. He still claims that he is the real victim here of an extortion scheme by a former DOJ official. That person has denied any wrongdoing, and sources tell us that the matter is being looked at separately, George.
Matt Gaetz is going to the pokey. It's just a matter of time. Okay, so please note that. Number two, Matt Gaetz is likely also involved not only in human sex trafficking, but also involved in pay for play. Let's put it that way. Giving up favors for money and access. It looks as if these women may have really been utilized as a way to get favors out of him based on some of the reporting that has come out around the situation. Brett, what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah. When you said like how he does his hair in the morning, if you want to see that, there is I forget what I think it's called The Swamp. It's an HBO or Showtime documentary, and you get to see him do that. And he is so wildly vain, which is ironic given the final result that he's like nailed it. But this is something that is going to swirl, and I think it's justice. Just I'm very petty, and so I think this is perfectly just given all the wild accusations, that baseless accusations that Gaetz himself makes. He'll be like the far right or the far left radical Joe Biden with his socialist agenda. It's like you're making that up. So he has to say alleged in front of all of that stuff. But what it comes down to is I love every minute that Matt, because I'm very petty. I like that Matt Gaetz is absolutely sweating behind the scenes because his roll boy Greenberg has turned over, when you say receipts, literal receipts, saying here is money for the name of the girl who was underage at the time that I paid for her to essentially have sex with me. And all the stuff he's already agreed to is so frustrating because it would sink any politician in any other time. Like Gary Hart was on a boat once that said monkey business and he was gone. Front runner to nothing. And here's Matt Gaetz saying, yes, I did cocaine. Yes, I had parties where I paid for sex with women. I'm just saying they're not underage, or I didn't know at the time. Like that's where it's at. And I think it's tough for people to really wrap their minds around it, but not so much when you realize that Trump is kind of the face of the Republican Party. And essentially, Matt Gaetz is a poorly done 3D reprinting of a younger version of him.
Man, you are hilarious, brother. Well said, well said. My grandmother taught me something a long time ago. She said, Rashad, there is no honor among thieves. And that is what you see right now. Man, listen, as soon as people started sniffing around with Greenberg, he said, oh, wait a minute, hold on, wait a minute. I got somebody even bigger than me. And then the process started. And Matt Gaetz is aware, he knew what it was already. That's why he tried to get a preemptive pardon. He was seeking a pardon from Donald Trump, even though he didn't know that there was an investigation into him for anything, right? He already knew his friend was snitching because he knew that if he was in the same situation, he'll snitch on his homie. That's why they're the same people. All right, Brett, it has been a pleasure, my brother, having you on Indisputable. Tell people how they can follow you, man.
At Brett Erlich everywhere. Watch Happy Half Hour Wednesdays after the bonus episode on twitch.tv/TYT. That's 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And then Sundays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I do the Sunday stream at the same place.
And I want to say this, man. People may not realize this. You are such a talented individual. You can do it all. Host, tell jokes, produce, edit, manage. An all-around good guy, man. I appreciate all you do for Indisputable and everybody at TYT.
I appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you, brother. All right, we got more on the other side. Indisputable.
Old school's pitched to me from Jake. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it? I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Hey, man.
Easily.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies. And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join and free trial.
I'm old school with the old folks. Good
John, come back.
Get ready for it.
Electric cars are awesome, but they aren't the best tool for every job. You can't park them on the edge of the sidewalk while you run into the store for a few things. On top of that, an electric car is just financially out of reach for many people. That's where Zoom electric scooters come in. When I say electric scooter, I'm talking about small motorcycles with space in front of you to put your feet. The Zoom scooter has a range of 60 miles, offers a smooth ride up to 40 miles per hour, and can be charged from any electrical outlet. Start saving on gas while reducing your carbon footprint. To find out more, go to tyt.com/Zoom. Enter the code TYT50 to get an additional discount.
I'm Brett. I would like to refer to this segment as the Do I Still Have This Talent show. So I want to see if I can play harmonica without my hands. I don't know why I have that. Nothing's gonna be more impressive than that. I can also spin a basketball on my finger. While drinking. I'm gonna spin a basketball on my finger while drinking apple juice. You can do this, dude. It's also flat. I don't know if that helps or hurts. And it seems to be somewhat wobbly. Ta-da! Nope, I don't know how to do this one. This one's a fail. Nope. Oh God, I'm so mad.
Our community faces a never-before-seen public health and economic crisis. Businesses are calling Levin Papantonia with their legal questions regarding COVID-19. You've asked and we've answered. If you're a business owner and have suffered financial loss or closure from COVID-19 and have questions regarding your insurance policy, call us for a free consultation. Some policies may provide coverage for lost profits and earnings. Stay safe, and together we'll get through this.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me go to some of the viewer comments, hot and heavy. And remember to join me on YouTube, Indisputable TYT. The YouTube channel is Indisputable TYT. Follow me on all social media that way as well. Okay, from the members list, Democulus, I think. Those protesters walked in front of tons of houses and didn't destroy any of them. That makes him think, what makes him think that this house was so special that they will go out of their way to target their house? Well, he doesn't think that. He wanted to be a target. He wanted to bring attention to himself. And now he has a political career and he's running for the US Senate. Pyralisha, maybe I said that right, forgive me if I didn't. How are you allowed to run for Senate when you have a hate crime on record? Or did it not qualify as a hate crime? That's the thing, and that's why I say shame on this prosecutor, because even though the prosecutor allowed them to plead out to lesser charges, the prosecutor did not create any other caveat to that plea deal. They could have made them say, we will not run for political office. They could have put in the plea deal, we need to apologize. All of that is permissible under the law, and the prosecutor did not mandate any of it. Greyhound Dragon says, angry mob, how? Let me guess. He also thinks the insurrection on January 6th was just tourist. Promise you he does. Guarantee you he does. Twitch, this show and Fridays on TDR are the highlights of my week. Been in a really bad place mentally, but your show brightens my day. Now, let me tell you something. Thank you for saying that, and you brighten mine. All right. Bayou Belladonna. Dr. Richie, again, you don't mean the audacity, you mean the caucasity. That's exactly what I mean, the caucasity, yes. All right, thank you guys so much for all of the comments. Ladies and gentlemen, there has been a false narrative about black fathers in the United States of America for a very long time. I work to rebut that false narrative and to provide clarity to it. There's a book I recommend for you to get. It's called No BS for Black People, and BS stands for bad statistics. It shows you the game of how statistics are utilized to create a biased narrative against people of color and marginalized people in the United States of America. Get that book when you get an opportunity. It changed a lot of perspectives. It has changed a lot of perspectives over the years. On the show, I have Chris Stewart. Chris Stewart is the co-host of the 8 Black Hands podcast and CEO of Bright Beam. Chris, thank you for being on the show.
I'm so happy to be with you. the man, the myth, the doctor. Good to be with you here, sir.
Good to be with you too, man.
Could be a better time right before Father's Day for us to beat up on this myth about the missing black father.
Very well said. Thankful to have you on the show. Let's first talk about the reality of policy and how policies should connect to uplift fathers in the community, especially black fathers, and how the disconnect is what we see today.
Yeah, I think the number one reason to rebut this particular myth on the so-called missing black father is because it's being used as a political weapon to say that there's no such thing as systemic racism, that the systems are not the problem in the lives of black people. You hear conservatives say it all the time, that it all comes back to a missing father in the house or an unwed birth rate within the black communities. All of that is a front for us not to talk about policies and strategies. My pushback on that is, if black men are so important, and we know that they are, to communities and to families and to the world, what are you doing specifically in your policies to make sure that they're not vanishing for low hanging fruit like nonviolent crimes? We went through 3 decades of locking up black men. There's 1.5 million black men that are missing just from the system, period. That should have been there, should have been in their communities and produced more than they're producing. What about the New York Times story that came out just 2 years ago that said even when black people are born into families of means with 2 parents, they are the fastest to fall out of the upper middle class of any group of people, right? There's systems and there are policies that we need to be talking about. If we care so much about black fathers in the lives of our kids, let's keep them in the house, keep them in their communities, and keep them strong.
Very well said. There's a cause and effect relationship to all of this. So you can't get to this conclusion about black fathers and then say, well, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's their fault. When the truth is, there's always a policy connection. As you just said, you got over 1 million black fathers outside of the household because of an ecosystem of justice that is not justice for them. And because of that systemic oppression and bias and everything else connected to criminality or nonviolent crimes, you have the over sentencing, over prosecution, over arrest of black communities all over this country. You don't think that impacts families? But even with that, brother, and here's something that I encourage people to research, even with all of that against black fathers or black communities, Pew Research released a study that showed, number one, the majority of black fathers are actually in the household with their children, but the way others contextualize the data, they utilize marriage as the prerequisite. So while the marriage number may not be high, fathers in the household with their children is over 60%. The other number they don't tell you about is where black fathers actually rank number 1 in Pew Research. Black fathers rank number 1 in Pew Research for spending more quality time with their children than any other group in the United States of America. But I could not find one headline, brother, one headline that led with that narrative. That was on page 14 or 15 of the Pew Research study, but we lead in that arena and nobody talks about it. Isn't that something?
I mean, number one, you have to question why it's a secret to most of America that the norm for black children is to be growing up with 2 parents. The norm in America is, forget this out of wedlock old statistic that people use. 2.5 million black children are living in the house with a black father and a black mother. That's the majority. So the norm for black children is to be living in a household with both parents. Of the remaining black children who are not living in the same house, the majority of that next group still have the father in their life, right?
That's right.
So we are being characterized as overall and stereotyped by a small portion of our particular parents, the parents in the black community. There is a reason for that. There is a political utility to continually push this faulty narrative. The goal is to get us to stop thinking about policy, systems, systemic racism. We have children who are being suspended out of kindergarten. We have the book being thrown at people for the same crimes by race. If we care so much about black men and black fathers and black families, we will look at policy solutions and systemic solutions and stop pushing this voodoo math. These bad statistics is where you started to denounce black fatherhood.
What you just said is proof positive that those that bring up the conversation are not genuine at reaching a remedy. And typically, it doesn't matter what race it is that says it. If they bring up the argument and they put all of the emphasis on what they have concluded, and they do not attempt to talk about policies that could provide solution, they're showing you their true hand. They're showing you their true colors, because they're not concerned about correcting the problem. They're simply concerned about dissuading you from looking at it from a policy context.
Yeah, and this is what I'll say about it right now. We have to speak with these platforms. This is why I'm so grateful for you. People who have platforms who are leading us in the media are our best allies when they will tell the real narrative and tell the real story about these things. Right now, my social media feed is lighting up with black men across the country, black fathers who are sharing their hopes and their dreams. Their babies are graduating, they are at graduations, they are buying the first car for their kids, they're working multiple jobs, they're picking up extra shifts, they're doing everything that they possibly can for the babies in their lives, and they are invisible. They are not being seen, and we need to end the invisibility of black male fathers who are getting it right and doing the job. We have so many black men waking up every day doing jobs they hate for children that they love, and we need to actually stop letting them be invisible. There are bumper stickers that say, "Start seeing motorcycles," right? Don't start seeing motorcycles, start seeing black men who are doing their job with their kids, because that is the norm. That is the norm, they are the majority, and the media has a deep vested interest in making sure that that norm is never presented fairly, and we have to stop it.
Brother, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. Chris Stewart, tell people how they can follow you and connect with your movement.
You can find me on Twitter at Citizen Stewart, or you can come to my website. You can find me there, www.citizenstewart.com.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, on the other side, we have the bullpen. Stick and stay.
Can you name the representative of your district?
The representative of my district, oof.
I have no idea.
I actually don't know who the representative of my district is.
Do you know what the corporate tax rate is?
I think it's pretty high. I should know this.
Like in between 20, 25%. I don't know.
How many amendments are in the US Constitution?
Oh no.
This brings me back to grade school.
I should know this because I was a history major, but I do not remember.
I don't know that.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no clue. Nope. I don't know the answer to that one.
You don't know? I didn't know. It's time to change that.
We live in the best country in the world. We live in the most powerful country in the world. We love our American freedom, but only half of us take part in the political process. Only half of us vote. We don't fulfill our duties as US citizens to make this country a better place. It's time that we use our voices as a team, as a country, to become better. We will stand up. We will be empowered. We will stay educated and informed about politics every single day, because it's our responsibility. And Politiscope just made it easy for you. So join me, join us, and let's be Americans.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You
think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse us and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me read some of these comments. All right, hot and heavy. A420 Kitty Dragon says, and with property values automatically lowered based on race, that further reduces the tax funds available for schools. It does, correct. Vague Philosopher says, Vague Philosopher subscribed with Prime. Thank you so much for that. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Indisputable TYT. Now, Venix says, I can totally see Quentin Tarantino making a movie on Juneteenth so he could have actors say N-word like 50 times in the movie. You're just so wrong for that. Trill South says, keep spitting the facts, brother doctor, and I shall. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, I have Christopher Naiweem, I think I said that correctly, Republican advisor, founder of American Veterans Policy Network, and founder of the Naiweem Group. Good day, sir, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Richie, I appreciate it.
Let's talk about police reform, specifically in the context of policy. Generally, are you for or against police reform?
I would say I'm generally for police reform if it's going to be something that's going to make policing more efficient, more safe, and serve the societal value that it has. I think that's really the key question is what is the police reform and what is the goal of police reform? Where are we trying to go?
What ideas do you have? So you say you're for it. You're actually with the majority of Americans. Roughly 95% of Americans are for police reform. 58% of Americans say that reform must be dramatic. 51% of Republicans are for some level of police reform. But here's the issue. We disagree on the details of what reform is. So anytime I hear someone say, yes, I'm for it. Well, tell me what you are actually for in the reform space as it relates to policing.
Well, I think first we have to identify the problem, right? So I think that we would need to identify a problem. What is the problem that we are trying to solve in the context of police reform? And I think what's playing out now in America, it's very difficult to be a smart person. And it's very difficult to be someone with experience who studied statistics and had practical experience in the space. So I have a former military police background, obviously a lot of contacts in law enforcement communities, but also a lot of contacts in advocacy communities and civil rights communities. So we need to figure out what is the problem we're trying to solve in the police reform context. Because I think if we don't have the problem, there's absolutely no purpose in going through all of the possible policy prescriptions to solve it.
Brother, I'm sorry, man. I feel like you just said a whole lot of nothing. I want you to actually talk about a reform policy that you agree with. You've established on the show, you are for police reform. You establish you want to make sure you're thoughtful about what it is. And I'm giving you an opportunity to say, here's what you believe in as far as reform is concerned.
Sure, so I asked what the problem was, Dr. Richie. That's what I asked. I asked what the problem was. Once we identify the problem, we can figure out what we're reforming. I mean, obviously organized police forces started back in England and Europe. They've migrated to the US. We have organized police forces that follow laws and they have policies and they have there's different policing styles from enforcement to community. There's obviously urban communities, there's rural communities. There's a variety of different ways in which police activities have. And I presume we're talking about the high profile cases that are streamed through the news every day about particular individual cases. So I support body cameras on police officers. I support commissions to look at techniques and tactics that officers deal with, and also support community policing, which is having civic groups and local leaders meet with police leaders to identify what problems are happening in society and what they can be doing differently. So I think that helps the direction of the conversation if we know what the problem is in terms of what areas of policing we should be changing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you just named some policies, and thank you for naming some policies. Do you know what you just described, brother? Do you know what you just listed?
I just listed some ideas about police reform in the context of policing and still a search for the biggest problems we don't discuss.
All right, so you broke up a little bit at the end, but I got the gist of what you're saying. What you just listed, everything you just said, is actually inside of the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act of 2020. However, that act is universally disagreed upon by those on the right. So let's talk about that act in specific. What parts of the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act do you disagree with?
So I think one of the challenges with major legislative pushes is most members of Congress get very little input into that bill. I mean, leadership drafts a lot of those bills. So if you're an individual member, it's at least in the US House, you get very little input to actually amend that bill, whether it's in a committee or before it goes to the floor. So I think my first issue with the legislation is it greatly inputs each individual member of the US House's ability to actually put their input into the bill, number one. I think so. There's a lot of material in bills. Obviously, there's a variety of amendments and content. Glancing through the bill, reading the summary, reading some of the provisions, part of my concern about the bill is really kind of twofold. One, it's very easy to block a bill, especially a major bill in the Senate, where then nothing gets done and we get nothing. So we don't have any kind of compromise and we end up with no particular product. There are some things, for example, banning of techniques. I think we have to be careful in that space because banning techniques, what are the other causal effects? Looking at police incidents, outcomes. It's very difficult, and if you interview anyone with law enforcement experience, I have some, you're gonna get these completely broad and departed views from experiences in the practical reality.
So let me ask you this, because you did take me to a particular part of the bill. The bill would ban chokeholds. Good thing or bad thing? Do you need a chokehold in order to perform policing?
You could.
Okay, so let's be very clear. Chokeholds are, the majority of police precincts actually already ban chokeholds, number one, which proves that statistically, you don't need it in order to operate or perform your duties as a law enforcement officer. So why would you be against the use of chokeholds? You gotta remember, man, you're a former law enforcement guy. Cops have combat training. They have multiple non-lethal devices, weaponry. They also have training to de-escalate an aggressive situation. So they have all of this training. You mean to tell me that they can only perform their job, their duties, if they're able to choke somebody out in a chokehold that has been deemed against policy by the majority of precincts around the country?
I think if you're following the rules of force and the broad police training, I think that the idea that you would need that would be extremely limited. I could certainly draw up some scenarios where you could have an officer who is knocked to the ground, or for example, smaller in stature, a female officer, where that could be their last opportunity against a citizen that's 220 pounds. And as we know, many police officers get killed in the line of duty and aren't weighing in on this bill either because they were killed. And we have citizens that have been killed. So I take the issue very seriously. Whichever direction we go, I'm also a veteran of war, so I understand having your life in jeopardy, being in combat situations, being in difficult situations involving law enforcement. So I take it seriously. What frustrates me are a lot of politicians and policy people that don't actually want to get a bill through. They don't actually want to improve certain aspects of society because it would take away from the great benefits of keeping people divided and keeping the friction burning on the issue. That's kind of one of my frustrations.
Listen, and I get that, man. Everybody who's a politician to some degree will play politics. I do make a distinction between a politician and a public servant. Right, a lot of politicians will play politics with these various bills. Let me be very clear about my stance. I don't care why they promote a certain bill. I don't care why they vote the way they vote. That's between them and God. I don't care if they are authentically connected to the bill or not. I do care about how they vote on the bill. That's between me and them. Their motive behind it, we can debate that in another conversation. But the bill itself, I want you to focus on the policy. The policy itself says we're gonna ban no-knock warrants. We're going to ban these chokeholds. We're going to increase and encourage community policing, things that you agree with, and you still have this universal no from people who are on your side of the political equation. I don't get that, brother. If you can sit here in a conversation with me and say, Doc, these are things that I'm actually for, right? Why aren't Republicans pushing legislation to promote these reform policies?
If I had to guess, I would say they don't want to get trapped. And what I mean by that is we're looking at different
So they playing politics then?
Of course they're playing politics. I mean, well, let me ask you this. I think it's germane to the discussion. Are you familiar with the Breathe Act, the legislative proposal, the Breathe Act?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay, the Breathe Act is a bill, and it's a mega bill. There's many provisions in it that was produced by Black Lives Matter Global Network. The more formal organization produced some legislative prescriptions that has not been introduced, at least in this Congress. I don't think it was introduced. It was a blueprint in the last Congress. And there is a wide sweeping series of proposals in there. But among those are things that are fairly radical, abolishing federal law enforcement, things of that nature. And those are only part of the provision. So that's sort of a mega bill. I think that.
But what does that bill, brother, that's not even part of the mainstream conversation in politics, period. What does that bill have to do with the George Floyd Act?
Sure, it's actually very part of the conversation, Dr. Ritchie. It's actually very part of the conversation. Well, these are policy prescriptions that have been promoted by members in the Democrat Party that they want to see.
A minority of members of the Democratic Party.
Okay, well, it hasn't made it into this bill, but there are many different provisions in there. They might not want to get. It's a take-off process.
That doesn't work on this show, brother. So number one, the bill.
Well, how about this, Dr. Ritchie? How about this? How about this?
Wait a minute. The bill that you're talking about is considered to be extreme, even by the standards of many liberals, progressives, etc., inside of the Democratic Party. It has not been adopted into the mainstream. One bill does not have anything to do with the other. The George Floyd Policing Act is a good bill based on policy. When you break down the policy, 88% of Republicans actually agree with the policies that are in the bill. It's kind of like Obamacare, where over 80% of Republicans agree with Obamacare until you told them it was Obamacare. That number jumped down to 22%. So once again, you have a very similar instance even here. I don't have unlimited time with you. I do want to get your comments and your inquiry on the record about qualified immunity. Qualified immunity basically creates a protection between the behavior of law enforcement and any type of liability beyond that behavior. Do you agree with qualified immunity, or should there be some common sense reform to limit or eliminate that barrier of qualified immunity with police officers?
I think there should be some reform there. When I hear common sense, I kind of roll my eyes because it's just so difficult to figure out what that is these days. But I think there should be some limits to it. There should be some accountabilities and for outlandish comment. But we have to look at what the scope of that, because we also, if we had every single police officer in court with the millions and millions of interactions and traffic stops that where there's not any kind of a violent incident or any kind of an incident, we wouldn't be able to have any kind of functioning whatsoever. So I would support some of that in a limited capacity.
All right, let me push this on you. Now I'll let you respond. I know you got to follow up, but let me say this to you. I'm glad that you're open to the conversation. That actually means something, okay? Qualified immunity, the origin of qualified immunity came from southern states, and it was endorsed by Dixiecrats at the time. And it basically said, we are going to create a protection between law enforcement and civil rights activists because we don't want them to be sued for them bashing in the head of these black children. We don't want them to lose their homes. We don't want them to lose their assets. We don't want them to have to pay out personal liability for operating outside of the law. And that's why these qualified immunity bills were passed and signed into legislation. So it's already problematic at the origin of it. The DNA of the bill is rooted in racism, number one. Number two, when you look at qualified immunity, many people will say, well, the reason why we have qualified immunity is because policing is so dangerous. And it's kind of the argument that you're making, right? You would have a lot of tort law happening if you get rid of qualified immunity. But policing is not the most dangerous profession in America. As a matter of fact, cutting down trees is the most dangerous profession in America as it relates to death and actual harm or injury. Being a convenience store worker is more dangerous. Being a taxi cab driver is statistically more dangerous than being a police officer. So you can't use that argument to justify the constitutional intrusion. And then thirdly, as it relates to qualified immunity, if a police officer is operating within the boundaries of the law, they are immune anyway from prosecution or civil liability. It's only when they operate outside of that rule or outside of that protocol would then they be personally liable for the constitutional violation or the criminality or the criminal act against the individual. Why is that a problem, brother? Because medical doctors have a higher standard of care, psychiatrists have a higher standard of care, and then police officers have a lower standard of care when interacting with the community. That makes no sense to me.
Well, I mentioned that I'd be open to some amendments to qualified immunity. I mean, there's a lot to unpackage there. Did you know that currently 60% of police officers don't wear body cameras? I mean, nowhere in the bill.
As a matter of fact, brother, that's why the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act should be promoted. If you have a problem with the fact that all cops don't have on body cameras, well, let's get some legislation on the books that mandates it. It mandates it for federal, but it also provides a way to take away money from police agencies that do not operate in best practices. That's a good thing if you have a problem with the fact that they don't all have body cameras.
I do. I mean, one of the clients I've had the opportunity to work with is the second largest body camera company in the world, and they've got contracts.
And see, look at that. You'll get, brother, and you'll get paid, brother. Look, you win in both ways. If you get everybody mandated with body cameras, not only do we win as black, brown, and marginalized people in America, but you win with your own personal business.
Well, of course, but here's the point, though. Why hasn't that get done? And we also have the Democrats have taken control of the government. I mean, I guess that's my question: is these key items that they could do haven't been done. And my other issue.
Let me remind you. Wait a minute. Let me remind you. 94% of Democrats in leadership are actually for universal use of body cams. Over 80% of Republicans are still against it. I think the problem was with your party, sir. You need to talk to your fellow Republicans as to why they are uniformly against the idea of having body cams for everyone.
Sure. Well, that's a conversation that's going on. I mean, I think there's other issues. There's also in this entire conversation, there's certain variables that are game-changing variables or keystone variables that change a whole host of things in this reform. That if I were sitting in Congress, which I'm not, that I would be looking at and discussing. I mean, for me, when I look at these particular incidents, and there's a lot of baseline things here I don't think we're discussing today. I think it would be very beneficial if we did. I mean, I look at things, I sit back and I try to listen to learn, not to listen to respond. And when I look at statistics, and when I look at health and human services, and I look at homeless issues, and when I look at statistics of having African Americans today, 12% of the population of being half of the homeless population, I think that is a major problem. And no one addresses that problem, and policymakers don't address that problem. And then when you have societal issues that rise, I don't necessarily think that the people working on the legislation in Congress want to get it done, because there's such a benefit now, and there's such a business in keeping the entire world divided on actual reforms. And as you know, the Constitution is written in a way, essentially in the Senate, it's very difficult to get a major bill through. It's very easy for one senator to hold it up. So sure. The challenge here is there's so many different things we could be discussing.
And Brother Christopher, I got to bring you back, man. I'm coming to the end of the show, but I want to say thank you. Number one, I agree with you on the policy issue as it relates to homelessness, something that I've been fighting for many years. And truthfully, you know, this comes down to local government. A lot of that comes down to what the local government is doing to address that policy. Federal government can be a partner in that, but the local government has to be the catalyst and the leader as it relates to getting that problem under control. I want to bring you back, man, because I do believe people like you may save some of the Republican Party, because you make a whole lot of sense on some stuff. Now, there's plenty of stuff I completely disagree with you on, right? But you actually are open to a policy conversation and a policy discussion about what Americans care about. They care about policy, they care about homelessness, they care about police reform, and you're not totally cut off to that conversation. So I want to say thank you for joining me on Indisputable.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to have a great weekend. Remember 3 things. Be good to yourself, be good to each other, be good to the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable. Enjoy this Black Father video.